I'd like to call to order the Oconee County Board of Zoning Appeals this 23rd date of July 2018. And boy, we lost a lot of time real quick. We'll talk, there's a number of people here tonight which we're really encouraged, and I wish we saw more people at our meetings. So we really want to hear you and listen to you today, but we want to do it as efficiently as possible. We'll make some suggestions for that process in a minute. But the first thing we want to do is to ask for approval for the minutes from March 15th, 2018. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion we approve the minutes from the March 15th meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I think there was did we change the error in mixing up my name and Charles's name as far as the co-chair?
I believe, it's been so long, I don't remember, but
Okay.
I think we did.
That was my understanding is that.
I think we did.
That it was
It's been
amended.
a long
Okay.
time, but I think we did, yeah.
All right.
And the other thing is, on the second page of the minutes, where it talks about, Mr. Honey has stated that he understands that the only think above ground, I think there should be tank above ground. That
Okay,
it's the
What page is
one,
that on?
two, three, fourth paragraph down on the second page. Just be tank instead of think, I think is what you intended.
okay. Gotcha.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as amended? Raise your hand. Accepted. Okay, so now we have on the agenda is the time for public comment on non-agenda items. So this is for people that are talking about things that aren't going to be covered tonight for this, talking about special exceptions. And I guess I don't have the sign-in sheets. Anybody sign up for non-agenda item? Nope, no non-agenda items. I guess everybody knows why you're here tonight then, specifically. We now would like to have staff update. Do you have some things that you'd like to share with us, Bill?
The only thing we might mention is just that the council, I believe, has passed now the provisions that were changes to the, I believe it's gone through third reading now. No, we haven't gone through third reading yet. It's coming up on third reading for the changes to the notification process for BZA cases. So that'll be coming, be finalized here pretty shortly.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, now we get to the part of the meeting where we're all here for, and that's really to review the request for special exceptions. Because I think there's like 15 people that have signed up, it's a number of people, and a couple of things that we as a board would suggest that we consider doing if it's okay with you. One is that we could just minimize the amount of time that each person speaks, maybe limit it to say 2 or 3 minutes a person to speak, or if you've already written a letter and you're just going to reiterate the same information. We've read the letters already, so we have that information, so that would save a little bit of time. The other consideration is that rather than each individual speaking, if you could maybe, we could give you a little bit of time to get together as a group and have a spokesperson, and so instead of everybody saying the same thing, if somebody could be giving the consistent message across the group, that would help a little bit on time as well. Let me just ask the group, would you like some time to try to appoint a spokesperson for your team, so to speak, or would you want to speak individually? Don't all speak at once. The wedding chapel, there was 4 people on the list. What was the question?
I guess I don't know who the spokesperson, who I would team with.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we just do this then to make it simple, is if you're agreeable, we'll try to allow it to, say, 2 to 3 minutes per person for speaking on a subject. And if I could ask staff to keep track of time for us, and
3 minutes or 2?
3 minutes a person, that,
Excuse me, may I ask, is that for the person who's affected?
pardon me?
I'm sorry, I'm Roberta Barton, I'm a local attorney, I was hired to speak on behalf of the Whites and the Cobbs concerning the second agenda item, and I just want to make sure that I would have enough time to speak.
Sure. Have you signed in?
My name should be listed, that is correct.
Under,
It should be Roberta Barton. Ms. Cobbs signed in for me, so.
So you are
I don't see it.
you're representing the applicant, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
I don't see it, to be honest.
I added it on there. It's under my name, it's under Sherry Cobb.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
So under that situation, don't they have 5 minutes to speak in favor of?
Yes,
Yes,
that's a totally different time item, so you should
Yeah, I
have
just wanna make sure
enough
that
time.
was
Good point,
clarified.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's a policy that had been established, but it's certainly not, it's not it's a procedural thing. So if you want to extend the time, or if you've got a spokesman for the group, it's strictly up to the board, but that was just a way of keeping some kind of measure of control over a meeting in terms of the timing, but that's a representative for the group in a sense. So, if you want to.
Yeah, and since we just have one, it seems like a reasonable request. Okay, so let me just kind of read then what the agenda will be in terms of reviewing these special exceptions. The first thing will happen is that staff will present the statement of matter before the board. So they'll be describing the situation for all of us and giving us their background that they've done. Then the applicant will have 2 to 3 minutes to discuss why they want the special exception. And then staff will have a few minutes to review that, what the applicant said, to maybe clarify some things or make some corrections or debate that a little bit. And then the opposition has a chance to talk, and that's where each opposition person would have 2 or 3 minutes, say 3 minutes, I think is what we said, then to discuss why they are against the special exception. And then the applicant will have a chance to rebuttal that, okay? And then throughout the process, there's unsworn public comment. So if you haven't chosen to speak, and then if we go into the topic and there's things that you want to say that nobody has brought up and you really want to say that, there may be an opportunity at the end to then ask for permission to come up to the podium and speak. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention, is that I ask your cooperation. This isn't a huge group, but it's a big group, and these are important concerns that you all have, and that's the reason you're here. You want to be heard. In order to be heard, we want you to be at the podium. Please don't say things out in the audience or make comments out there. Please ask to come to the podium and speak, and then give your name and for the record, and then say what you have to say. We appreciate that. Okay, so I guess the first thing is the first exception that we have in front of us is item number 5 is Daniel Jacob, is it Maloof? Maloof? Sorry about that. Is requesting a special exception approval as outlined in Chapter 38-7.2 and 38-11.1 of Oconee County zoning ordinance for a wedding chapel facility, no vertical structure, in a lake overlay district at 330 Summit Drive, Salem, South Carolina, and then a long number. So first would be statement of matter from our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we do that, let me another small piece of housekeeping, just a reminder. You saw some other materials on your in front of you today when you came in, and that is additional. Let's call it an addendum. It's additional materials that have been submitted mostly through email since that agenda packet went out. So you're seeing some material you may have already seen again, or you may not. But it's material that in most cases did not get into the original packet. what is in front of you there to review as you are able to. And most of that is, again, citizen comments, emails, responses, that sort of thing. But if you have questions about that, just let us know. If you don't, I'll proceed with just a little bit of background on this case. The special exception request by Jacob Maloof. As you know, the special exception situation applies in the Lake Overlay District for uses that are considered non-residential. That means if you intend to do a non-residential type use and within the overlay, you're required to have approval through a special exception process by the Board of Zoning Appeals. It was determined that the use in question is non-residential. That is the wedding chapel. As you know, it's not a covered facility, but it is a wedding chapel for just that purpose. So it is a close line which actually comes across that property where the overlay line crosses. But I believe the applicant has accepted the fact, and we have determined through some back and forth with the applicant and some work he's done, that the use in question is just within the overlay, therefore requires the review process. Many of you may know, and I think there may be a map in your packet that shows it, that there's also a tree house on the site that's been rented occasionally. That's been ruled to be and determined to be a residential use. Therefore, it's not part of this request. The only part of the request is the wedding chapel facility. As you know, that road is a private road coming up to Summit Drive off of Cool Valley Road. Cool Valley is a county road. But the road leading up to the Summit Drive location, which essentially dead ends there, is a private drive not maintained by the county. You've also seen the material from the applicant concerning the nature of this facility and how many weddings he has had to this point, how many people he expects to see, and that's something he'll address in his presentation. We simply laid out the background for you, and as you know, the criteria for special exceptions, and you'll hear this several times tonight and need to address these in each case, are listed in your packet and under the staff report. And that has to do with whether or not the use is conforming with the comprehensive plan and consistent with the spirit and intent of the requirements of this chapter, whether it's in the best interest of the county, the convenience of the community and the public, whether it's suitable for the property in question and designed, constructed, and operated and maintained so as to be in harmony with an appropriate appearance to the existing or intended character of the vicinity, and whether it's suitable in terms of effects on highway traffic, parking, and safety with adequate access arrangements to protect streets from undue congestion and hazards. These criteria are a part of the process for you to review, and certainly those need to be in the forefront of consideration. In addition, as you also may recall, in any case, the board has considerable latitude to grant, deny, or condition an approval on other conditions that you see fit and appropriate based on what you hear here tonight and on the criteria. So you have that alternative as well to these. You'll see in the packet other attachments, including photos from the applicant, some materials on road work in that area, and some emails and letters of opposition to the request, as well as some in favor. That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Could I ask one question? In one of the documents that was handed out that was from you, it said that it's the special exception request is to allow a wedding chapel and associated tour activities. Is the tour activities above and beyond the wedding chapel, or is that part of the wedding chapel request?
That's really the intent of this request was just to address the wedding chapel.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on board have any questions of staff up to this point?
Does the wedding chapel just the chapel portion that's in question, that falls within the range as far as the distance from the lake?
It's very close, but all evidence that we have to this point, including some from the applicant himself, would indicate, and from our own review of the GIS maps, which are not precise, but all evidence we have to this point suggests that it's just within the overlay, and as a result, we have to assess it on that basis. There's no evidence to the contrary, in other words, to demonstrate clearly that it's outside the overlay. We're pretty sure it's close, probably within about 20 feet.
Any other questions? Okay, would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening,
Good evening.
board, friends, neighbors.
You can give your name, please.
Daniel Maloof. Just to answer your questions, the tour activities, I'm not really sure where that came from. There would be none conducted there. And yeah, according to the survey we did of the shore and the property, it's 21 feet to the back bench of the wedding chapel is, so, or 20 feet, 21 feet in approximately. And this was done with GPS survey, so it's plus or minus 8 feet in both directions, so.
Okay.
I had one more map. I know you guys have a bunch of maps that kind of overlies all 4 of our acres. It kind of shows a little bit better to me what we have going on. Would you be wanting to see this?
Sure.
Is it in our packet at all?
No, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
And then one last email of support from somebody who was here last time who couldn't make it this time. Can I give that to you as well?
Sure. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm basically going to read the narrative that I submitted already, in case any of you have not had time to review. My wife and I are kayak tour guides on Lake Jocassee and have been operating weekend tours on the lake for going on 6 years now. When a friend gave us the opportunity to buy some land close to the lake, we jumped at this as it had always been our dream. We currently own 2 acres, and my father, George Maloof, currently owns the adjacent 2 acres. Our plan is to build a lake cabin that will one day be our full-time residence. But we also wanted somewhere to stay in the meantime when we were providing lake tours, so we decided to build this small tree house. When Lana and I got engaged, we wanted to get married in the most beautiful place in the southeast, which is the woods at Lake Jocassee. We picked out a spot and did our research regarding that lake overlay district. On the GPS and the GIS on my phone and on Oconee County GIS, I measured a line from the lake to our property, and it seemed that the 750-foot line was right on the back line of our property, which I assumed that Duke they had originally drawn it at 750 feet. So, because I guess the error on my phone showed that it was about that. I was not aware of an actual lake overlay map until Adam showed it to me. Since our wedding in May of 2017, we had interest from friends and family to have their weddings there, so we thought it would be beneficial to host occasional weddings on the property. The venue itself is very simple. There's a 30 by 60 gravel pad that is designated as the reception area. This is where you put a tent, tables, and chairs for a dinner reception. The chapel area is also very simple, as it is just benches, mulch, and a burlap runner. The benches are made from trees we felled from the property. We take pride in maintaining the natural appearance of the property, complete with 15-foot mountain laurels and rhododendron, providing a natural backdrop. Due to the guest limit we impose, we are easily able to park the cars for these events on our 3 acres that lie adjacent to the wedding venue. All maintenance on Summit Drive has been paid for or completed by myself. There are only 3 weddings scheduled for 2018, 2 of which have already occurred, and there's 1 more scheduled for the fall. We don't anticipate anybody wanting a midsummer wedding or a midwinter wedding, so the spring and the fall would be the season for it. So we're looking at a handful of potential weddings in the spring or fall. Weddings are limited to 50 to 80 guests, and music is limited in volume. Quiet hours of 10 p.m. are also enforced. We hope to be as low impact to the neighborhood and neighbors as possible. On 6/21, a property and full pool shoreline survey was conducted and is available. This indicates the back 20 feet of the project are within the Lake Overlay District. It should be noted that it was not my intention, and I apologize for operating within the Lake Overlay District without approval. We would like to request permission from the BZA and our neighbors to continue hosting occasional weddings at our property. It's been my pleasure to be a resident of Oconee. I appreciate the time you guys have taken to review this case. If I have any more time, I just wanted to make a few more points that Summit Drive was subdivided into 8 parcels in 1978. Each of the lots was sold for residential purposes. However, no development of any kind took place for the following 3 decades. The 30-year covenants automatically ceased and terminated in 2008, still with no residential development having occurred. According to Oconee County, the parcel is also in control-free district.
I guess time is,
That's it.
time is reached, yes.
My last point, yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay. Does any member of the board want to address any questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you very, whoops.
I have one.
Yes,
Would you be willing to limit the number of cars that you would accept at any one time for a wedding? Looks to me like in your supplemental letter, you'd be willing to do that.
Yes, sir.
To what?
The larger of the 2 weddings we had 50 cars, and the smaller of the 2, there were 30. And, you know, it held both of those numbers. I think that 40 would be a good fair number.
And would you be willing to limit the number of weddings that you would contemplate per
Yes,
year?
sir.
How many would you think would be a maximum to have?
We were thinking that 12, like 1 a month on average would be reasonable, knowing that some months there would be none. So, you know, so we were thinking 1 a month on average, being 12 a year, not necessarily.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda on the process is staff comments on the applicant's comments.
Chairman, our comments were included in the staff report. We might also note that, you know, that, again, remember that the overlay line is very close, and as Mr. Malou pointed out, he had that surveyed out, and so just remember that for consideration that if a property is divided by the boundary goes right through the property, in this case it does, only the portion of the property that is included in that area is you know, it comes under the provisions of that overlay. The remainder of the parcel does not. It's literally outside. Some codes will, if you have a bisected parcel, will incorporate the entire parcel and say a part of your property is within an overlay or zoning district, all of it is considered to be. In this case, it is not. So in theory, one could move your operation outside that overlay and they'd still be able to do it because it is a control-free district outside the overlay. As you know, control-free districts are very limited in terms of use restrictions by the county unless you have private covenants or restrictions that control that. And I guess it was my understanding initially that there was no such covenant in place addressing this kind of use there. But that's something you may hear more about tonight. But just so you understand that background involving the nature of the overlay. It is an overlay, but there's no the underlying zoning is control-free district.
Yeah, whose responsibility is it to determine exactly where the zone is, where the overlay comes out to? Is that the county responsibility or the property owner's responsibility?
Adam and we had this conversation.
The onus is on the property owner.
It really is.
burden of proof as per our code lies on the applicant.
It's, it is measured from the lake. There's a formula, if you will, in the code that says here's how far from the lake. But when it really comes down to a precise measurement of that, we don't rely on our GIS maps. That's not a reliable measuring factor. So Mr. Maloof actually did some work on that side of it by doing some GPS work on it, and coming up with a figure that was very close, but it did still indicate that it was located within the overlay. So we accept that. He would have to demonstrate to us that it's not located within the overlay. It would be, the responsibility would be on him to determine, to show us that it's not by by having the work done to actually demonstrate it with certainty.
Would a land surveyor be able to determine where this imaginary line is if he had it surveyed?
I'm not sure exactly what all he did have done, actually. Might be a question for him to answer.
Available in the packet, a survey.
Does it show the imaginary line?
Or, not the whole line, it just shows that the property itself. It just shows that the closest point in the lake is 730 feet.
Are there any other questions that you have of staff at this point?
I just want to confirm, our assessment of this, Bill, our assessment of this application is specific to just the chapel area. It doesn't have anything to do with parking or anything like that. It's just activity within the chapel area, correct?
Well,
Does that question make sense?
It's the use, and as I said, you have the opportunity to either approve, deny, or place conditions on approval.
Right.
And if you want to have, if, for example, you had a condition that addressed parking, fine, you could do that. There's nothing in our code that addresses parking, so it would be.
Right, I was just going off your comment that
Yeah.
if a piece of land was outside the overlay district, and for instance, his parking area is already outside that district, we're not really able to address that kind of issue. Does that make sense?
Not directly, but because you're considering the approval of the use.
Okay.
The chapel, you could address parking in the context of the fact that you're trying to determine whether or not the use is appropriate.
Right.
Is there sufficient parking? But you're right, if it's outside the overlay, I mean, you can continue to have that there, but it doesn't prevent you from chiming in on the issue of is there sufficient parking for the use he has in mind, because you're considering that use.
Understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm good. Okay. Okay, if I think we're ready now for the opposition comments to discuss, and I think the first one on the list is Christopher, is it Lynch?
Yes, sir.
My name's Christopher Lynch, and as Mr. Maloff said, to the board and to friends as well.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Yes, sorry. First of all, I did start building my house on Summit Drive in '08, I believe it was. Now, I actually pulled a permit from the county and had inspections done for a house to be built directly behind a gate on Summit Drive. My house was the only one, and is still the only one, on Summit Drive. So we share this road together along with other residents on Summit Drive. Summit is a steep drive. Since we have a wedding chapel at the top of the hill and commercialized business going on what was meant to be a residential neighborhood to begin with, Mr. Maloof, I'm sorry, Daniel, Covenants have run out, mainly because we've never faced with a problem before. And so it was sort of ignored. That was our stupid mistake for not paying attention. It's supposed to be a residential neighborhood. It's not supposed to be a commercial zone. But if we're going to consider what is really the most important thing, is not whether it's in a zone, but Cool Valley is a county-maintained road. It washes out every heavy rain. The last wedding or the one before, I'm not sure, we had the catering van stuck in the ditch on Cool Valley blocking the road. It's the only way in unless you go through private property on the backside. And I do not think that Mr. Benji Mosley would appreciate that, but I won't speak for him personally. So therefore, we have a road that's county maintained that gets washed out, wide ditches. I've fixed it myself a few times. Thing is, you cannot get two cars by one another. Most of the time, our neighbors, we have to back up to allow the other one to pass on Cool Valley, which is a county road. So the point is, on that matter, if you take Summit totally out of the question, and you take the annoyance of 40 cars coming up a steep gravel road, or 50, or whatever a number y'all may allow him, when we have that many cars that there's no speed that they acknowledge or anything else, gravel, dust, and everything else, it is an extreme nuisance. Don't drive 45 miles a day, twice a day, to go and be annoyed by such as that. It's a private, pristine place. There's places in Oconee County that we need to keep pristine. We need to keep beautiful. I'll just say, I know you guys have emails. I know you have letters. There's apparently people that couldn't be here tonight that is in opposition. It's nothing personal against the Mello family. Nothing personal at all. It's just that everything in the world does not need to be capitalized on. Some things need to be kept as a home.
Okay,
Is my time up?
time.
Okay, it seems like I got a little bit less time there. I
Well,
guess
there's
it
one
always does.
applicant and several in opposition, I guess.
Well, I'm sorry I don't have your maps, but Cool Valley's the main point. There's no way that it can handle that much traffic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions that you have for the opposition that was presented?
Thing I see here is if he had moved this thing to where it was outside the overlay, we wouldn't be here discussing
Right.
this now.
Right.
And it's so close to being outside the overlay, you know. And it seems like we're not focusing on, it was never protested on the amount of traffic. It was never protested on, it was protested on the wedding chapel. And if remember, this is actually in a zone-free thing, which some people don't agree, but is zone-free, which you can do whatever you had. If this was zone traditionally rural here, we wouldn't be having this discussion either. So, you know, it seems like it's the placement of the zoning chapel is what we're looking at. It's in the overlay. If the placement of the zoning chapel was outside of the overlay.
Mr. Honey,
even
could you,
by 2 feet,
Mr. Honey, do you mind speaking a little bit closer to the mic? We were having trouble
it
picking
would,
up.
even if it was by 2 feet, it would not, you know, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So, you know, it seems like that by being zone free, he is really zoned in this county because you have to be asked to be rezoned to be zoned anything else. So, you know, it just seems like you know, he has a problem. He's inside the overlay. If he wanted to move it just outside the overlay, then he wouldn't have a problem.
Right, that's my understanding also.
Yeah. Even though I don't think he's got a problem anyway, but, you know.
Okay, why don't you come up to the podium for just one more minute, just you can address what Mr. Honey is talking about.
If I may, sir, it sounds like that you're trying to figure out a way to give them a pass.
No, sir, I'm trying to follow the rules of the county.
Okay? With all due respect, are we ignoring what I just stated and what we have other residents that stated about the problem with Cool Valley? Is the county willing to repair Cool Valley to where it doesn't create a problem every time it rains? And to pave the road so that it can be adequate to an entrance? Just so that he can have a a commercialized building.
So if we could if we could halt this discussion for a moment here and get to the next, and then we'll be back to that, I'm sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person, George Malouf.
Good evening. I'm George Malouf. I'm Daniel's father. I'll keep it really brief. We love the Jocassee area. Since Daniel was 3 years old, our first trip up there, we went camping. And he became 29, and he found the property, and he bought it, got married there, and I fell in love with it after I saw the good work that he's done up there, trying to keep it natural, close to nature as possible, so I bought the next 2 acres. I think I just briefly wanted to say that, as the gentleman mentioned over there, it's the intent of the zoning regulations that are in question here. Are we consistent with the intent of the regulation? This is not a commercial activity. This is not a gas station or a warehouse. This is 6 tree trunks that are lying flat on the ground that are 21 feet closer to the lake than they should have been, according to the survey that was done, professional survey that was done. This is very much in harmony with the surroundings of the area. Again, we're talking about 6 tree trunks. There is no congestion there. There are 8 properties. We own 4 of them. If all of them were developed, we would have more traffic up there than any one wedding can handle at one time. There were 5 cars in one driveway this weekend alone, times 8. That's 40 cars right there on a weekend. The van that got stuck was the catering van at my son's own wedding. So that will happen anywhere. To bring the road into the question of of having the tree trunks on 21 feet close to the property, I think this is a stretch. We could go ahead and move the 6 tree trunks out of the area, but we just don't want to cut any more trees. And we don't want to. We could carry on with this activity as we wish, but we do it with respect to Chris, with all the neighbors that we have, and we've been good neighbors all along. We fixed the road at our own expense. We kept it real clean. We took all the dirt that was piled up on that road that was put up there by the construction of Mr. Lynch's house at our own expense. We moved it all out of the way. We're trying to be good neighbors. We will not do anything to jeopardize or disrupt the neighborhood or the activity up there. And we thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we have one more person that's speaking, and I mixed it up because obviously I have opposition and 4 we're together here. But Sarah Jean.
My name is Sarah Jane Bush. I live at Roundhouse Point, which is just a step closer to the park than Cool Valley Road. The thing that bothers me about both reasons I'm here to oppose special exceptions before this board is that Lake Jocassee is a jewel. It is an extremely unique place, absolutely beautiful. And I am afraid that it is going to be commercialized. And you can say this is just a wedding chapel, but that's commercial. You're paying to have a wedding. There are caterers, there is traffic. Our neighbor's only daughter got married 2 houses away from us a couple of weekends ago, and it was a rowdy weekend in our neighborhood. I can't imagine if there is a place where people come regularly in a residential neighborhood for a wedding. I don't blame them, it's beautiful, but there are other places in Oconee County just as beautiful. I'm opposed to things being commercialized around Lake Jocassee when there are other places in the county more appropriate for these activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions the board has of the opposition that has spoken right now? Okay, what?
You want me to answer what he was said to me?
Sure, yes, please.
Well, you know, if we're talking about the wedding chapel and it was 10 feet farther the other way, then it would be perfectly permissible. You know, the wedding chapel is 10 feet inside the overlay. Most of his property looks like it's outside the overlay that he's got there, so there'd be no question at all. So we're saying that it's a commercial operation, and it is a business. I'm sure they've got to make money on it, or they could not operate it and all like that. But it's, and I want to say this, it's not the best place in the world to have this thing. I went out there and looked it over, and it is a narrow road. It does have a lot of things like that. But, you know, if he was outside the overlay, then some things we have to have that we really don't want, but it's permissible in the county, you know, that you can have it in the overlay. And now, where he's at, it's a special exemption for any kind of commercial property or anything like that. But it's not the best location in the world as far as the roads and things like that out there and all like that. So that was my feeling about the thing, is if he moved it, you know, you'd have we wouldn't have any problem with it. But since it's just inside the overlay, that's the only other option that would weigh the problem of it being a poor location for me.
Yeah, I think one of our board members had an experience to back up on Cool Valley Road or long distance. So you have some idea what that was like, right? That's Cool Valley Road is a county road.
Yes, sir, it is.
So that's been the main opposition that was talked about, is the condition of the road. So who pays for the upgrade of a county road?
Well, the property itself's not on a county road.
It's on a private road.
That's right.
Okay, gotcha.
And the use of Cool Valley is access to his private road.
Right, okay.
So
Correct.
what he does on his property is impacting everybody in the neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman, the county, we have land development standards in the county, but they're limited in some respects. For example, we really don't have commercial land development standards. And also, if the point at which you have to upgrade a road to a certain private road standard that the county does have would not be at this point, because he doesn't have enough development there to kick that requirement into play that would require him to upgrade the private road, let's say, to a certain standard that's in our unified development standards and in the roads and bridges standards. So, we are very limited in the toolbox that we have available to us in our current code to address that. He's on a private road. It's not controlled by the county in that respect. We don't maintain it. We don't have any standards for it. We have limited tools to work with. Now, you as a board have the ability to put conditions on an approval that you could ask for anything you think is appropriate based on the criteria to make it, a use you think would be in keeping with the standards, but the toolbox we have to work with in terms of code is limited.
Okay. I think where we are in the process is that everybody's had a chance to speak. There is an opportunity for the applicant to have a rebuttal. Is there anything in addition that you'd like to say based on the comments you've heard? Daniel or George?
Just that it's come at a great financial expense for me to get Summit Drive back to where it was 40 years ago when they parceled this out, you know. No exaggeration. I mean, the road was 5 feet wide and, you know, piles of dirt and trees everywhere. And I bought a chainsaw and cut them all down myself and would hire groups of people off Craigslist, you know, $100 a day, come out and help me, you know, equipment rentals, all that, you know, at expense to clean it up and get it to where it was at least just not an eyesore, you know. And I'm not really at the point in my life where I can have a lake property without having some sort of income coming from it. And, you know, that's my way of kind of making a life from, you know, you can't farm anymore, but this is kind of making money from the earth, which is how my expedition company has kind of blossomed as well. You know, we make money from the lake, not in an aggressive way, but, you know, because the lake's not there and the lake's not beautiful, people aren't going to pay me to come take a tour of it either. So, you know, I do take that very seriously, and I want to make sure that the entire area, not just the lake, but where we live and where we do this, stays a pristine area where everyone can enjoy. That's why we wanted to get married there, because it was so pristine and untouched. And there are not other places to get married outside. You know, there's a pretty place, and then that's it. You know, so there is a need for it to some extent. But then the other fact is, you know, we've been advertising for 12 months, and we've had 3 weddings. So it's not going to be like, you know, back to back every weekend. You know, it's very low impact, I believe. And just the other fact that, you know, like my dad pointed out, if that was developed into a residential neighborhood and each house had a weekends full of cars there, we'd have 40 cars on that road every day. So instead of having a house on every lot and 5 cars there every weekend, we're going to, you know, diminish the amount of impact on Cool Valley by only having that many cars come in once a month or on average. So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Question before the board. I think we're at the point where we need to discuss this, but we need a motion on the table, I think, in order to discuss it. We have 2 methods to go forward. One is that we can group all the conditions for a special exception into one vote, or we can do them one at a time. It's the chair's recommendation we do it one at a time, but I would like a feedback from the board and a motion as to which way you would prefer to handle this special exception. Does that my question make sense?
I move we do it one at a time.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, we'll do it one at a time. So the first criteria for granting a special exception is that the request is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the spirit, purposes, and intent and specific requirements of this chapter, to include the definition and intent of the district to which the special exception is being requested. Do I hear a motion in the affirmative to grant that special exception on that criteria?
I'll make a motion to grant the exception as read.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? The only question I have is, kind of gets back to what you were saying, is that the comprehensive plan doesn't really speak to this at all. This is totally outside the comprehensive. This is a control-free district, and it's consistent with the intent and specific requirements within the overlay district. There are restrictions. It's up to him whether he moves it or not, but I think we're voting on the way it is right now, not how it could be or how it could change. So I'd like that not to cloud our judgment to say, well, then they can change it later. Well, we're voting on, all we can vote on is what the conditions are now, I think. So I wonder if that would change how we vote on number 1, that's all. That's just my question. Any comments on that? Yes.
Chairman, if I could comment, I get conflicted on where to put a concern I might have in any one of these four conditions. As I look at this facility, it's very well done, minimal impact on the environment, and it has several people saying, hey, it's just really a great facility. The fact is, it's a non-residential use within the lake overlay. And I, for one, think we need to protect the lake overlay. The lake overlay was put in specifically to prevent non-residential uses that impact negatively people in the area. And we've had several comments from folks, not only tonight, but also in letters, that say the traffic and the noise and the general disruption is a major negative impact on them. So to me, it's immaterial if the chapel itself could be moved another 20 feet and be outside the overlay. The fact is, right now, it's inside the overlay, and that makes it unacceptable to me. Where to put that in our four, my objection, in our four categories of evaluation, I'm not sure. I think it's maybe the fourth one. But
It could be, or it could be the first one, the comprehensive plan. I mean, you know, the intent of the overlay and what the intent was, and is this in spirit of the overlay? I mean, that could be argued that.
okay, I agree. I think that's a good point.
But if it,
That's my concern overall, it is within the overlay. It is by some accounts, a disruptive, has a disruptive impact on the neighborhood. And I guess I'll go back also to the fact that the original covenants called for this to be totally residential. Shame on them for not renewing the covenants, but it was intended to be a totally residential area. Both inside, it had nothing to do with the overlay at that time, it's just all the properties there were intended to be residential. Legally, that doesn't apply anymore, but in my mind, it does. It's a residential, it was originally, people bought property there with the understanding it would be residential in nature. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, and we have a second, and we've had discussion.
Mr. Chairman, can I get
Yes.
the names again? Who made the motion initially on this? And who was the second? We have a
Mr.
second
Hania?
on that motion.
Mr. Hania.
So we've had a motion and a second, and we've had discussions. So what we're voting on is whether the first special exception should adhere to the criteria for the special exception should be adhered to, and whether this criteria, whether this special exception does adhere to that request or not. So is there any more discussion that we want to have on this? What? You look like you're going to say something.
What happens if we don't grant him the exception and he moves it 20 feet?
Then he's,
Then he's
Then
in
he
compliance.
can do it.
that's
what he gets to do.
That's the point Mr. Honey has been saying, yeah.
Also, keep in mind that you have to approve, if you're voting on the individual criteria, you're going to have to have a positive vote on each one. A negative vote on any one of them would kill the entire
Right.
request.
Right, we're at the first one right now. So,
And you have to have a majority, so we need 4 in favor of any given.
Yes, sir, but by breaking it out this way, you just need a positive vote, a majority vote on each of the criteria.
or one negative, and that's, right,
One negative would
right,
essentially be a denial.
right.
We've been there before.
Correct, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, but when we vote, we need 4 members to vote. You need a majority vote, so we need 4 of us to vote in favor of a particular motion.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table to state that the special exception is in accordance with the comprehensive plan and all those other words that we just discussed. So are we ready for a vote? Okay, so all in favor of the fact that we're saying that it is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, raise your right hand. Okay, we have 1 or 2? Pardon me? Who? Okay, you
I
voted.
voted, yeah.
Is in, okay, how many feel that it's not in accordance with the comprehensive plan?
Okay.
Okay. So we don't have to go through the other conditions, do we know?
I need to be sure I've got the individuals who voted. Mr. Gilster, you voted no.
Right.
Gwen? No. And
No.
Mr. Codner, no. Morgan?
No.
And Mr. Honey?
I was yes, but it didn't do any
Three
good.
That's a negative vote, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we're ready for the next one? A special exception request?
Yes, sir. You might want to clarify what just happened, unless you want me to do it.
Yeah, you might
Well,
want to tell us.
yeah,
what it
we,
is.
and I apologize for the, just a second, please. So we have 4 conditions that we have to base our decision on whether to accept a variance request or not. And what we did is we hit the first one, which talked about, is this consistent with the comprehensive plan? And the vote was that it does not consist with the comprehensive plan, and therefore, the special exception is not recommended. So that's essentially what we did. So if something does pass, it has to pass all 4 one of those special exception conditions. And we stopped at the first one. So, and I think there's a lot of discussion about what you may do from here. You know, obviously you have lots of options, but I hope you understand the rationale was based on the conditions as exist right here today. Yes, sir. Did you want to speak?
Am I able to withdraw the motion before a final decision is made?
No, the decision's been made.
So it's done.
It's done.
I can't withdraw the application at this point.
What your opportunity would be to appeal the decision. We're a quasi-judicial board, which means that our decision is a legal decision, but it could be overturned by the Board of
No, sir. The next step, short of some kind of, well, the next legitimate step in the process at this point is normally the courts. You appeal to the courts. There's no other internal body that you would do. This does not go to council on appeal. It does not go to the planning commission. You are the judicial body, quasi-judicial body that decides this case. So if there's an appeal, it would be an appeal to the courts. Now, if a citizen or an applicant or whatever has a concern about the ruling that was made initially by the staff as to whether or not, for example, he was required to come before you to request a special exception, he could appeal that to the board to say, I don't agree with the ruling of the staff, that I feel that this was misinterpreted. But that's a different issue, and it's a different case. You would have to come back at another time to appeal the ruling of the staff, not your decision. Your decision is.
Can I ask for the findings?
Pardon me?
Can I request the findings?
The findings.
Yeah, there'll be an order that we'll release, and then and also the minutes of the that you have here tonight. But there has to be we'll provide an order, a written order that the chairman will sign, and that'll include language that restates what this decision actually is.
Can I ask for a clarification on just one line item, if I may? So we can still move the benches 20 feet over,
Sure.
and
Yes, sir.
Sure.
we
Sure.
can continue doing whatever we want to do.
Sure.
We would just, from the staff standpoint, we would, and that's your call, and if you decide to do it that way, we just need to make sure we had clarity and some kind of evidence or justification to that. In other words, you just have to show us, as you've done to some extent with the survey, that it's now outside of the overlay. Once we're convinced of that and the zoning administrator makes that determination, then you could proceed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, in relation to the complaints about the condition of Cool Valley, I'll run that by our roads and bridges people tomorrow morning first thing and ask them if there's any sort of option, opportunity, or what the schedule is for the repair and maintenance of that road.
Okay, so now we're ready for the next variance request, right?
Yes, sir.
So the next variance request is item number 6. Sherry Cobb is requesting a special exception approval as outlined in Chapter 38-7.2 and Chapter 38-11.1 of the Oconee County zoning ordinance to operate a fire sales and possible produce stand activity in the Jocassee Lake Overlay District at 123 Francis Falls Drive, Salem, South Carolina, TMS, bunch of numbers. Okay, so I guess we have a staff report on that special exception request.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just, if you look through the packet, and I want to apologize, I understand a few members may not have received their hard copy in the mail. They should have, but apparently some did not. You had it digitally available to you, but I want to apologize for that. The other things I'll mention at the beginning of this report, you'll see where the applicant has stated their position, what they're doing, why they're doing it, that sort of thing. After that, we have the staff report, which basically addresses the fact that this is a request, again, for a special exception within the lake overlay on Jocassee to allow this firewood sales stand to continue. I think there's been some confusion about the fact that the applicant included a line in that application that referred to and the possible addition of a roadside stand or fruit stand or something of that sort. I think the applicant can clarify that when they speak. But the initial issue there was, and as you know, is the existing firewood stand, which has been in operation now for some time. But after it was called to our attention that it was this was a commercial, what has been determined to be a commercial activity in the overlay, we informed the applicant they would have to request a special exception situation, in a similar situation to what Mr. Maloof found himself in. So that's where we are, and it's a similar structural situation, special exception, same criteria in play. As you know, that property is right off Jocassee Lake Road, and you turn off Jocassee Lake Road into the little road that leads up into the development subdivision behind the applicant's property, the Francis Falls Road. That is also a private road. We're back to that issue again, which the county does not maintain. And in addition to that, as you know, Jocassee Lake is a state road, which of course the county does not maintain. Another thing, and I'm not going to go through the entire report, just give you through a few points of interest that could come up and possibly something to consider, is that this particular parcel is not within the development that's, I forget, someone could correct me on this, what the name, Jocassee Glen. It is not within that subdivision. It is a separate parcel outside that development. In addition to which, once again, as in the case before, the overlay line bisects the property. Most of the property in the rear is not within the overlay. It just happens that the area near that frontage onto Jocassee Lake is in the overlay district. So we've got a similar situation in that respect. No one mans the firewood stand, so that's something else you'll get some information on. It is by honor code, I guess you could call it. You go up and drive into that access road, the road that leads into the subdivision, and on into the property to pick up your firewood pay. But there is no staff there for that activity. Even so, it was deemed to be a residential use and therefore requires board consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're now ready for the applicant to speak. Do we have, how many people are speaking on the behalf of the applicant? 2? 1?
Yes, well,
2? Okay. Yes. Please
yes,
state your name.
I am Roberta Barton. I'm a local attorney. I do have some items that I wanted to share with you. There are some additional letters of support. I didn't make copies. I apologize. If you could just look at that and pass that down. And then I made just minimum copies of this little packet that y'all can maybe share. It shows pictures of the stand itself. But the point of this, first thing I wanted to mention about this use is really, we disagree with the assessment that it wasn't grandfathered in. My clients were adamant about knowing that it started in March of 2012. And the reason why is they had moved in the year before. That was their first winter in. They heat their house by wood. And the winter was over. They had the spring, they had excess wood. Mrs. Cobb worked at the park, and they had just opened up additional parking in the park because their slow season, they were coming out of their slow season. Ergo, they remember it was March of 2012. And actually, if you look at the statements by those that signed a complaint, they don't dispute that. So the wood pile should have been grandfathered in. Beyond that, though, I would like to point out what a benefit this wood pile provides to the community. Well, first of all, let me tell you, it doesn't actually could harm or negatively affect the lake in any way. And the main reason I put a topography map in there, in that little section, it's actually gravity keeps it a water flow or anything else going downhill away from the lake. So it cannot go into the lake or have any negative effect into it. Second, why is it positive? Is because it provides locally sourced firewood to be burned at that state campground. In fact, that there has been numerous problems with wood infestation. Y'all may or may not know, but silviculture and forestry is the only use that is permitted in all areas of the county. And the reason being is that's one of our main staples. It is the largest land use in our county, and it is one of our main agricultural use in our county. Over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we had the southern pine beetle outbreak, and I had attached a recent article from 2016 from Clemson citing that it cost the Southeast United States $1.2 billion in losses of timber assets. By providing locally sourced firewood, you're actually encouraging the safe environment of our forests. We cannot afford to allow these invasive species to continue to spread. Right now, we have 4 different species in our community, and that includes the southern pine beetle, the emerald ash borer. There is actually a printout of the website for the park that actually cautions about that species. And then also I provided one of the, I think the 2018 forestry report for the upstate, and it cites 2 other species that are in this community. So this is actually a service for our county and for our lake and for the environment. I don't know, if y'all will remember the bleak, vast emptiness of people trying to dump their pine trees because you had to get rid of them and get rid of them quick in order to limit the spread of the southern pine beetle. And you lost hundreds of thousands of dollars as a result. Also, in the complaints, one of the complaints that was cited is that, oh, it's damaging the road and they have no right to use the road. In the packet, I included an easement or not an easement, excuse me, the plat from 1967. And it shows that the property line falls within the middle of the road, meaning that each side of the property line can use the road, period. There doesn't have to be a specially written easement. But because they mentioned it, I did a little title abstract on the property, and apparently when the easement was granted to the subdivision, the property was not in, the entire, both sides of the property was in the gentleman's possession, meaning he granted only the use only to what he owned or what he was entitled to. But that's neither here nor there. I think that this situation is similar to the first one in
Time.
the sense, I'm sorry?
Time,
Can I have permission to continue?
how much longer do you need?
1 minute?
30 seconds?
Okay. I'll take that deal. The property that's damaged is damaged not because of the sale of the firewood. Between July 1st and July 5th, there was 60 cars that turned around in that driveway. All of that, all but 2 were just a turnaround. 2 of them stopped and bought firewood, and that was noted and taken care of. So you got less than 3% of the cars that are turning in and turning out. And what needs to happen is the subdivision should have maybe tried to make a discussion with the state park about how to address that problem. We also have pictures on their side that's been upkept, and the opposing side has not been kept up. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
And sir, you want to speak on favor of the application as well, the special exception, did you say?
I would love to.
Okay.
Thank you all for your time. I would not only like to address you all, but I would like to address the owners as well of the subdivision. The reason, we're not denying we're in the overlay where the wood is. The reason we chose that spot is because our carport and half of our house is not in the overlay. Sure, we could put the wood back up at our carport, but then then the traffic that's coming to purchase wood is coming all the way up the driveway, which may cause problems for the subdivision owners coming out of the property, which is why we chose to put it at the end of the property, where all they do is turn in off of the road. We put a separate drive so they come up onto our property. It's a 2x6. For some of you who saw it, it's a 2x6 length of wood stacked up for people to buy wood. And yes, it is the honor system. I grew up on a 150-acre farm. My family has owned that house since 1984. I've been coming there for over 30 years. I was there before the park was there. I've worked at the park. There's nobody that values that property more than I do. I know all the owners. I know the whole history of the lake, how Francis Falls Road came to be, okay, when it was just a logging road. So we're just really asking that you look at everything. I understand their concerns. I understand. I have a video that I know we don't have time, but if you guys want to watch it, it's really what happens there when it rains. And you can look at our side of the road that we own compared to the other side that Jocassee Glen property owners have already admitted they're responsible for the upkeep of the road. And you can compare both sides and see who's not taking care of the road. So I'm sure you'll hear some opposition that that's what's causing runoff in the road, and it's just that the wood pile is, and it's just not. So I just ask that you look at everything, and I'm just speaking from my heart. We didn't do this to try to make a quick buck or anything like that. My husband, bless his heart, he even delivers wood to some people who live in our community that can't get out in the wintertime, or they're elderly, or they're disabled. And, it's a service that we provide for everyone. We're to service the community, not just service ourselves. In your package, you probably see, I really believe the only opposition you have is from the property owners of Jocassee Glen. I do want to point out, too, there's one permanent resident there, and they are a half a mile from our house. So, and there's woods in between. So they really can't talk about what happens at the end of the road. Because my husband and I are there dealing with the problems of the park turning around roads. I think you'll see in the packet that the park manager from Kevin Evans has approved our wood. He's inspected it. He knows where it's coming from. He's also stated that the park last summer alone turned around 6,000 cars. And when you're coming up to the entrance of the park and the park rangers are standing there, and they see them in the road, the first driveway you see is our driveway. So they see the ranger, they see the driveway, and they pull in there and turn around. So that's where the road wear is coming from. And like I said, we could move it back up to the carport, but it's going to cause more problems for the people in the subdivision.
Thank you. Let me ask the board, do you have any questions
I
of
need
the?
to ask her a question, please.
Yes.
When you purchased this property in, I think
84.
1984, was this the driveway that you were using?
Yes,
Then you have established right of way?
yes,
Okay.
we have. We were there before the road was even named.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question. Ms. Barton, you made a sachet past grandfathering since sales started in March of 2012. Do you have evidence that it was continually maintained that way? Grandfathering typically ends after a year of unuse. And I wondered if you have evidence of continual use.
They stopped using, providing that, or stopped the sales of it. And no one else has either.
So you have proof?
I'm saying that.
That's the only thing.
Just your word. It's just your contention that you have continuously sold wood.
Well, the thing is it's not disputed that it started in 2000. And my client remembers when it started, and she has a reasonable basis of why she remembered when it started. I don't think that anyone else does, and I think that that would be applicable in a court of law, under the equity theory. Big Judge Judy, one forgets, the other remembers.
Not questioning March of 2012, just questioning whether it's been continuous since then.
And we would say yes.
You're saying it has. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Next time, could you use the microphone, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Just one point of clarification on the grandfathering issue. We were aware that had been considered, that was considered. The applicant did mention that we didn't have adequate verification of that grandfathering had occurred. So zoning administration ruling is that there was not enough there to justify allowing the use on that basis. That's why we're here tonight. We wouldn't be if we'd been able to establish that with certainty. So the issue tonight is really not the grandfathering, it's just a case before you.
The burden of proof is on the applicant to prove grandfathering, is that correct?
It is in our estimation, yes, sir.
And what would they have to do to prove that? What kind of proof could they offer to you?
I can't speak for Adam, he's the zoning administrator, but maybe it's like the old adage from the Supreme Court. I know it, we'll know it when we see it. Some sort of documentation. Yeah.
It's a wood pile, I wouldn't expect it being a rural wood pile, I wouldn't necessarily expect there to be a dedicated Facebook page and, Mr. Wood's Instagram. But it was contested that it was not. There's a little back and forth in that. And it is just like with the prior case, the onus is on the applicant to prove that. And I'm not satisfied enough to dismiss the complaints against it based upon that.
Mr. Chairman, I would think in general you'd have a business that's in operation and a business could show receipts and taxes paid and that kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
This is such a small business that they really can't show that. So we just kind of need to take their word at what they've been doing as opposed to looking for any kind of definite proof.
But if I understand.
I think we could take that into account in our deliberations.
Right, good.
And I can listen to them and say, what do we think?
Because I think what I'm hearing staff say is that they have not been convinced that it's a grandfathering, so they're taking exception to that.
Yes.
And
But I think we can listen to that as evidence and.
Right.
And take our own interpretation.
Does anybody have any other members of the board have any questions of the applicants?
Before you go on that, Mr. Chairman, just be sure we clarify it.
Okay.
You can consider issues what you think is appropriate, but I would urge you not to identify grandfathering as a rationale for approving the request or not approving the request, because that's not the issue before you. So if you did decide, for example, to approve it, stick with the criteria and base your decision on those things. That would be our recommendation to you anyway.
Okay, so now we're at the opportunity for the opposition to speak. And I guess the first name I have on the list is Kay Wade. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I asked for those who are in favor of it to speak before, but come on up, go ahead. I got everybody else out of order on the first one. I can do it again.
So I am here.
Please state your name once again.
My name is Kay Wade. We are residents of the area of Jocassee, and I pass this little firewood stand on a regular basis. And so I'd just like to say a couple of things, one of which is it's been there as long as I can remember, and we've been there since 2010. We go by it every day. It is always kept very neat. It is an important public surface, not just for the people who come into the campground at Devil's Fork, but also for people who love the entire region, which includes National Forest, the parkland, the Jocassee Gorges. All of that could be impacted by bringing exotic pests through the distribution of firewood. And it is a problem to the extent that South Carolina is now spending money to advertise, do not move firewood. It would only take a few instances of having campers come in and not have access on an evening when the park store is closed, when the local vendor is closed. And if it weren't for that little corner right there that just has a few bundles of firewood out there, they come in on a cooler evening than expected. They come in after a sudden rainstorm. And you let that happen a time or two, and people are going to just go right back to bringing their own firewood from home. So this is locally sourced. I think it is extremely important. I think that anybody who understands entomology at all understands how important it is to have that local source, and particularly after hours. So as somebody who has worked with the campground and who lives there, I would just ask you to please consider this a much larger public service than what it appears to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that I missed that was supposed to be speaking for the applicant? Yes. Are you signed up?
No.
Oh, okay, come on up.
My name's Ed Russell. I live on Cool Valley Road. And I've seen their log stand since I bought on Cool Valley in 2010. I remember sometime after that, a few months after I bought my property, I noticed some activity on that lot, like somebody moving in or moving out, whatever. And then shortly thereafter, I saw the firewood stand go up, and I thought, oh, that's a cool little idea. I don't know if I'd pay $5 for a bundle of wood since there's so much free wood around, but lo and behold, there was a couple of winters, because I too heat with wood, there was a couple of winters where I was coming home and I'm like, and now it's raining and I'm pretty sure I don't have any dry wood, what am I gonna do? And I drive by and I see their wood and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, now it's worth $5 to me. So yeah, I think it's a good service to have, because the store doesn't always have it, and they seem to always have it there. It's just like a little 8-year-old lemonade stand. Mm-hmm. It's hard to believe that we're all here for lemonade stand kind of thing. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in favor? Okay, so Mike Sewell and Debbie Sewell. Mike, who wants to go first? Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike Sewell, and I live in Jocassee Glen subdivision. It's a small subdivision with 13 lots, and right now we have 6 property owners. And we share a border with Devil's Fork State Park. And I'm here to ask you to deny the special exemption for the firewood stand and the proposed produce stand at 123 Francis Falls Road because of all the problems that just the firewood stand's causing. And the Jocassee property owner sent you a letter detailing the negative impacts of the firewood stand at this location, and has given you backup materials, including photographs with keys and property records and invoices for our maintenance costs. And I've also sent you an email from the South Carolina State Park Service. And I would like to emphasize 3 things in the letter I sent to you. The photo dated February 22nd, 2016, it's number 1 on the keys, dates the establishment of the firewood stand and the access road. And this photo was made shortly after it was established. It only took a few rains to damage the entrance to Francis Falls Road. They put gutter pipes, and they had probably a 75-foot ditch behind it. And of course, it just mudded the road up so bad we fishtailed coming in at the entrance, right off Lake Jocassee Road. And also, Francis Falls Road is a private road, not the White's driveway. It's the only access from Jocassee Lake Road for the 8 property owners beyond the Whites to get to their homes and their property. There is no special drive they put in for the firewood stand that was constructed in 2016. That doesn't exist, and they had that in their exemption letter. The only drive to that stand is the one that you have a picture of from me. And also, now I'd like to address your criteria. This business has a negative impact on the natural beauty of the area, the fairground-type fencing around it, the muddy parking lot, tarps over the firewood, and inappropriate signage. The delivery and storage area is a muddy landfill and a salvage yard with standing water and its breeding ground for mosquitoes. And all of this at the entrance to our state park. They tout the firewood as a convenience to the community. It's certainly not for the property owners who use Francis Falls for access to their property. And there are other sources of local heat-treated firewood in the area. For Jocassee Outdoor Center has it, and I sent you a picture of that. And it's heat-treated, and they're open till later in the evening, past the park store times. And as far as it being suitable for the property, they cut a steep drive into an embankment leading to a bare dirt parking lot. And of course, the water runs off from it in this area, and it degrades Francis Falls.
Time, sir.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Debbie, maybe she can pick up on some of the things you wanted to say in your time.
Hi, I'm Debbie Sewell. I'm a native of Oconee County, and I do live at Jocassee Glen with my husband Mike. I think the things that he wanted to say that he didn't is when that's a dirt parking lot. The runoff from this area is degrading Francis Falls Road, and the Jocassee Glen property owners, we put the bill to fix the roads. When the people who come for buy firewood, when a lot of them are afraid to drive up the road, so they sit in the middle of the road and block the road. And also, let's see what the other one he does. And having 2 businesses, if they go along with their proposed other business, it will add to the chaos. It's already congested state road. And Francis Falls Road is a private road, a 1-lane rock road. It's already overburdened, and the location is not monitored. There's no lighting. These problems are ongoing and can only get worse. what I wanted to say is I in particular wanted to address just the comprehensive plan and only a part of the comprehensive plan. And I'm going to read this, excuse me, but there are several elements of the comprehensive plan that address the importance of the county's extraordinary natural beauty. The value we place in the protection and conservation of our natural resources and sensitive mineral areas. Lake Jocassee and the surrounding area is one of these areas. Development in this area has strict restrictions defined by the Lake Jocassee overlay. The businesses requesting exemptions on these non-residential use tonight already exist, and you'll hear many negative impacts of the locations of these businesses, not just the firewood business, but other businesses as well, as you heard. I want to emphasize the negative effects that they have on the natural environment. There's an overburden on the private roads causing degradation, stormwater problems, and erosion. There's no security in sensitive areas allowing unauthorized people to enter these areas. Uncontrolled and unrestricted parking in natural areas that also contribute to erosion. Destruction of mature trees, native plants, and wildlife habitats. Accumulation of brush piles, junk, compacted soil, bare parking areas with standing water become breeding grounds for mosquitoes and other pests. This is a public health risk. There's complete disregard for natural beauty, the environment, or the community.
Time.
I just want to finish. I want to read one quote from the comprehensive plan. This is on page 16 of the land use element. It says, precious natural cultural resources, impossible to replace, can be taken from us by careless neighbors. We're all blessed to live in Oconee County. I have lived here my whole life, and I came to that property when I was 12 on Woods Road that's right behind us. It was, the Holcombs lived there then. Jocassee Glen was a logging place, so I know this whole area very well.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say, I don't think any of these should go past. I think they all should be denied.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Jane?
My name again is Sarah Jane Bush. I live on Roundhouse Point, which is on the far side of the state park. I'm here to say I'm not opposed to firewood. I'm not opposed to vegetables. What I don't like is chaos, and getting into the park, particularly on weekends, is total chaos. I sit in a line and wait and wait and wait. And there are people who are going to the park who get all the way to the entrance and are told the park is full. They have to turn around in this area that we're talking about selling firewood and vegetables at. A guy in a truck with a bunch of kids and a boat, and he's turning around in a tiny spot, and he's got to drive all the way back home. It's no place to add more confusion. Seems to me if this firewood is helpful, and I'm sure it is because it's local, and it's not manned, they could put their firewood and their money can down at the bait shop or someplace else where there is access. But where it is now, there is no access. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. And again, it's another commercialization of a place that needs to stay natural. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Roberta Barton.
That was me.
Oh, okay. All right, so you have an opportunity to now do a rebuttal from the opposition. So here's your chance to cover that.
Thank you, and I may have Sherry mention some things if I forget. As I said before, selling the firewood, it serves an important purpose. And just like you've heard from people that we didn't even know would come up and speak, citing that it's been there for a long time. But I would, cite that the plat shows the road is there, owned by the White and the Cobb family. They're entitled to do it. There's video, if it was necessary, to show you on the difference in the sides. But here's the thing is, they were like, oh, stop the chaos. It's far better to have 3% added to the car loads of those turning around and protect the livelihood of the surrounding forests. And if you get the pine beetles in there, it will eradicate acres and acres and acres of it. It cost this county millions of dollars before. We don't need it to cost us $1 million again. That's the reason why forestry and silviculture is allowed in every permitted use or every possible use there is. So I ask that you consider that it is actually a benefit to protect the area. So, did I forget anything? Yes. What I said?
I would just like to, it was mentioned that Jocassee Glen property owners pay for the repair of the road. It is stated in their right-of-way, the right-of-way was granted on the pretense that they would take care of the road. So they've admitted that they're responsible for the road. Like I said, I would love to show you a video. Just the other day, we had 2 inches of rain in 30 minutes. You can watch this video. It's a 3-minute video. And actually, the video of the storm itself is 1 minute and 47 seconds, and it'll show you exactly the damage to the road and what is causing it. And nothing is coming from the wood pile. And that's the best proof I have for that. So I just ask you to, once again, take everything into consideration that you've heard here. And if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to ask.
Do any members of the board have any questions of the applicant at this point?
We're going to have discussion later.
Right.
Okay. No question.
So the home or the wood pile in your property is not contained within that neighborhood, correct?
Correct. We are not in the subdivision.
So there are no restrictions from a subdivision?
Absolutely, there are no
No
restrictions.
subdivisions or no restrictions that have ever been in place and expired?
No. And actually, the property that butts up to our property, I have a letter from that property owner. It's in the packet supporting what we do. And he would be like I said, there's no full-time residents there but one. They are property owners, but they are not full-time residents.
So it seems to me it's the location of the wood pile,
Yes.
again, that is within
The zone.
the zone. So we get down to location once again.
Yeah.
Right.
If I may add something, a lot of the things that they complained about is outside the zone.
Yes.
It is not affected by the overlay and is residential use in nature.
The way I understand, we're not supposed to really be considering whether it's grandfathered in. We are really to consider the location of where this wood pile is that correct? And it being a business versus a residential dwelling. Would that be correct?
Well, that's the definition of why, what we're addressing here is that it's considered non-residential by definition, and therefore has to be considered by the board. That doesn't mean it's not an allowed use. It's allowed only by approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is the same situation as you faced before. So that doesn't mean that it's a disallowed use. It means you have to determine whether or not it meets the criteria.
So I guess
approval.
Then what it boils down to again, we're still in the zone.
Yes, sir.
And we're not talking about the end zone, so we're talking about the zone.
It does that, and the grandfathering question is a sort of a separate matter. As I said, if we had some definitive answer on the grandfathering, we wouldn't be here with this case. It wouldn't be on the table.
We should give us an easy one.
What I see here is the driveway, she's letting, these people are letting them use the driveway. This was a driveway that they established right away from before the subdivision ever got behind them. And if we ask them to move the wood to the house, then we're creating a bigger problem because it will deteriorate the road even more for the people that use the road. So we're actually solving a problem by letting it stay where it's at rather than move it farther out, have to drive farther up to get it, and more wear and tear on the road and all like that. And as I understand it, this road is used for a turnaround a lot more than it's used for buying wood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that would cause the road to be deteriorated, and it's not their fault because they're selling wood there and all like that. And I have used this campground, and it would be nice to be able to get wood there. And as far as produce and things like that, it would be wonderful for campers to have produce there too.
I have a question. There was a recommendation that somebody had made that possibly the firewood stand could be moved to what is already a commercial piece of property, that it could be sold out of there. Did I hear that correctly? Was that?
One of the opposition had mentioned that.
Would you consider that as a possibility?
Yep. I was just gonna say that, if they were gonna move it, then why not move it to their house and let them have to deal with all the additional traffic and the wear and tear? I mean, here's the thing is, and there's a lot more I could have added to this, is that these neighbors have been good neighbors. There was a fallen tree, and Mr. Cobb spent a good bit of a day cutting up that tree and removing that in order to help the neighborhood. It didn't affect them. They also did that on some of the other items as well. The neighbors could have tried to talk to him or try to discuss this with him, and then maybe just through a discussion, point out, look, I know you think it's us, but let me just show you this. And it would have been like, heavens will open up, and here it is. Here's the facts. It's the park. And then maybe have a discussion jointly with the park saying, we have this problem. Is there something that the state could do off of the state road to maybe either maintain it a little bit better or do this in order to address this problem? That's what should have happened. It didn't happen that way. My client has been doing it for a long enough time, and they should be able to continue to do it. It is something that is a benefit to the environment. And, they may not like it, but what they offended more by on the stuff that's outside the overlay. And the stuff that's outside the overlay should not have an effect what's in the overlay when they're not connected. When one's a residential use that's permitted and the one that is commercial use that is being, questioned is the one that's in, the subject before the board.
I don't know that we've ever heard, but what is the volume of this? How many pieces of wood does somebody buy in a month? I mean, 10, 20, 30?
For July 4th week, for 5 days around July 4th, it was they made $40.
But
It's not much.
It wasn't just July 4th. It was July 4th through July 5th. We keep a
Yes.
game camera at the end of our property, and both in the front and in the back.
But so how many transactions a month, do you think?
Hold on, I'll tell you. We also keep a calendar.
Just, trying to get a feeling for the volume of this activity. And
Okay.
it sounds like it'd be fairly small.
It is. Okay, let's look at June.
Well, you can just round off. It doesn't have to
Okay.
be a precise number, but just.
Looks like there's 13 days of sales.
Yeah, out of 30 days.
Okay,
it's not even
and a
half.
sale is like just one transaction?
Well, it could be somebody could come to buy 5 bundles of wood. If they're
Okay.
buying food for the weekend.
So maybe
Somebody could
20,
buy
30
1 bundle.
transactions a month, something like that?
Yeah.
How many?
Like I said, that 4th of July week, that whole week, there were 2 transactions that whole week.
Well, it sounds like big money.
And I also have pictures of that whole week, 1st through the 5th. There were 93 cars that pulled in the driveway. Out of those 93 cars, 2 of them purchased wood. that I could
Okay,
provide.
okay, thank you. I'm just trying to get some feeling for that. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, if I could touch on something that Ms. Barton brought up. Something I've struggled with on this request is, in general, I've thought of the lake overlay as protecting other properties within the lake overlay from unwanted non-residential uses. Jocassee Glen subdivision is outside the lake overlay. And I struggle with how much should we balance their objections being outside the lake overlay with someone who is inside the lake overlay. If you aren't careful, you're starting to get the lake overlay expanding with people outside the lake overlay raising objections. Am I making sense there? So I'm struggling with that. Wouldn't discount their issues, but okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I struggle with making the problem worse by making them move it to their house.
Understand, yep.
yes.
May I address the benefit of the firewood?
Sure, go ahead. Can you
Yeah, I can
keep
do
it?
it really quick.
Okay,
First of all, I have a degree in entomology, and I worked with regulatory for quite some time. I also worked with USDA. I also worked with the farmers in Oconee County. So I'm familiar with the firewood. It's a regulation, it's a restriction. It is not, there's not any inspections done with firewood. But what they ask for you to do, right now, Oconee County is we cannot bring firewood in or take it out of the county because of the emerald ash borer. And they ask that the firewood be local and heat treated. You can look at the regulations on DPI's website. I talked to them this weekend at the South Carolina Entomology Society meeting, beekeeping's meeting. But, and as far as your question is as to the right-of-ways and that kind of thing, what you don't understand is that we're not questioning that. We're just talking about the road they cut in. There was, nobody talked to anybody about it, and that's when the problem started. When they selling firewood, just selling firewood's not a problem, it's the location that's the problem. Going up that steep embankment, people driving up there, and the muddy road, that's the problem.
okay, thank you. Okay, I think it's time for us to consider a vote so we can continue some of this discussion. We have the same question as the previous one, is do we want to treat the four together or as separately, individually? Can I entertain a motion one way or the other as to how we treat this?
I move to treat them independently.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
Singly.
Pardon me?
If we're to move, he's making a motion to do them singly.
Separately,
one at a
yes.
time.
Singularly.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, we'll deal them separately. Okay, so I'd like a motion to the effect that this special exception request is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the spirit, purposes, and the intent and specific requirements of this chapter, to include the definition and intent of the district in which the special exception is being requested. If I could get a motion to the affirmative to that fact, to that statement.
I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? So what we're dealing with here now is, are we saying this is in concert with the comprehensive plan and the intent of that and the overlay? Yes.
I have a question. If we want to place stipulations on whatever we're going to approve, if we approve the whole thing, where do we put the stipulations? Where do we talk about stipulations?
I think an amendment to this motion.
To
that
this
we're making
motion right now?
I believe, right?
You could probably do it that way. I mean, each criterion has to be approved, but you could you could have one final motion that incorporates all of the conditions. if
I
you
just want an
wanted to do it
opportunity
that way.
to,
Yeah.
I would want an opportunity to move for some stipulations,
You
that's
can
all.
do one final motion that incorporates all the conditions and approve it on that basis.
But don't we run into a problem if we approve? It's already been approved. It's too late to put in stipulations, isn't it?
Yeah, I would go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Stipulations now? So, if I may modify the motion, that, I would move to stipulate that the firewood sales be no larger than what is stipulated in the application. It talks about a 2-by-8-foot rack and sales on the honor system. So stipulate firewood sales no larger than what is currently being requested, and also stipulate no other commercial activity take place on this property.
Okay, so we have a amendment, a motion to amend the motion to include the stipulations that Mr. Codner had suggested. Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, so the amendment is passed, so now we have an amended motion. Any discussion on the amended motion? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Anyone against? Raise your left hand. Okay, the motion carried. Okay, so we've passed the first exception.
Ms. Fowler is the one negative vote there, correct?
That's right.
Oh, I missed, okay. Okay, so the second criteria is that the approval of this special request is in the best interest of the county, the convenience of the community, and public welfare. Could I have a motion in the affirmative to that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Could I just ask for maybe a little clarification as to why we feel it's in the best interest of the county? Just
Well, there's been a lot of evidence proposed that we need locally sourced firewood, that there's a need for firewood from the people who visit the park. It seems that it meets the needs of a number of people.
Great, thank you.
Well, I also think that using the locally sourced firewood helps to protect our local environment from bringing outside potential pests into our current ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're ready for a vote. So all in favor of approving the second criteria for this amendment request, raise your right hand. Against, raise your left hand. That's your right hand.
Do I get 2 votes if I
Okay.
raise both?
Okay.
You wouldn't take instruction well, do you?
That motion has passed. We're now at the third criteria, that the approval of this special exception request is suitable for the property in question and designed and constructed, operated and maintained so as to be in harmony with and appropriate in appearance to the existing and intended character of the general vicinity. Can I have a motion to the effect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Who was the second on that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, discussion.
Discussion. In general, as I look at this, I generally would be a strong defender of the lake overlay. I want to prevent lake overlay intrusions. But as I look at especially if you come on Lake Jocassee Road up to the state park on the weekends or a holiday, something like that, it's a madhouse. This is really a commercial area. The state park, to me, makes it a whole commercial area, and that's what colors my thinking on actually these two requests before us. And therefore, while it is not residential in nature, I think given the location on a heavily traveled road that is particularly heavily used on the weekends and holidays, I think it is suitable for the property in question.
Any other discussion?
That's why I moved.
Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Anybody against, raise your left hand. Motion carried. Okay, so the last criteria that we need to run by this test is that the requested variance request is suitable in terms of effect on highway traffic, parking, and safety with adequate access arrangements to protect streets from undue congestion and hazards. Can I have a motion to the affirmative?
I so move.
I'll second. This is the most congested area in Oconee County.
Okay, the motion has been made
not
and
their fault.
seconded. Is there any discussion?
I agree with what Mr. Honey was going to say. I think that the congestion and the traffic patterns would be unchanged regardless of the firewood sales. I mean, I think that's been based on the amount of sales you said that you had and the your word in counting the number of cars that have turned around versus number of cars that actually bought firewood. I think it's.
And I'd agree with that. I also think these folks between Jocassee Glen subdivision and the owners of the property, they've got an issue with the roads. I'm not sure that's our say-so at all. It's a private road. I don't think we need to get involved in that road issue as part of this. And it seems like for the small amount of traffic that the firewood sales are, it pales in comparison to the other turnaround traffic.
And if we're speaking about traffic and issues with roads, like we said earlier, I think she has every right to move it up in her yard, and that could cause more traffic and road issues to these folks than it is now. So.
Okay, so based on the evidence presented to the board, do I hear a motion that the proposed special exception be approved? Be approved.
Whoa, we didn't, I don't think we voted on number 4.
Oh, we didn't?
You didn't vote on that criteria.
We discussed, with motion, we discussed it.
Oh,
We didn't-
okay, my apologies. Okay, are we ready to vote on number 4? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, Mr. Connor, can I get clarification when, in your earlier motion that concerned conditions, was the condition concerning the use itself that it not be expanded beyond its existing
Exactly.
activity?
Exactly.
Okay, I want to be sure we were clear on that.
My intent is to allow the current kind of operation and no other.
Right, I got
What I was trying to do.
Okay, so all in favor of approving that the condition does meet exception number 4, raise your right hand. If you're against it, raise your left hand. Okay, motion carried. Thank you for bearing with me on my confusion on this.
You're doing better than I could.
Okay, so now, I guess we're ready for the next, yes.
If I may, sir, we're running a great clip here. We've been going about 2 hours. I recommend maybe like a 5-minute recess, perhaps. Let us
Excellent
stretch the legs
idea.
for a moment. If that carries, then perhaps just remember the mics will still be hot and we're still recording.
Okay.
Just gonna leave that out there. So if you would like to bring that up, you're certainly welcome to.
I move we recess for 5 minutes.
Second.
All in favor, raise your left hand.
Are you trying to give us a tonight?
No, just every once in a while, we need some humor, I guess.
Your insight has been very pleasurable.
Well, good. Thank you. Point of order. When you start to talk, you don't hand it out, a thick packet for all of us to look at.
I just had to give
How are
her
we
a hard
supposed
time.
to look at the packet and listen to your words also? That's a problem.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to get
So,
on there.
well, I
I'll
kinda
remember
looked
that
at
for
it,
next
threw it,
time.
passed it down, I didn't.
The control room district affecting the son, the lake.
You got what you want.
Each of the complaints and there is nothing in the lake overlay district next to them.
Right.
There's not a single complaint coming from inside the overlay district. So it seemed that it was taking effect with this case, but not mine. Is that the case or no?
Well, it's, I don't think we're supposed to be discussing the case after the decision. We're supposed to only consider what's been presented here and discuss it, so we.
Just want to
Because it was
say
a good point,
consistency,
right?
consistency in the rationale. And one side, we're protecting the people within the overlay, and other side.
And
we're
I can
protecting
see
people
how you
outside the
would
overlay.
you'd feel that way. I mean, if I were in your shoes, I probably would feel some of that too. I think of the two as being quite different, but I'm not at liberty to have that discussion, you know.
Sure.
It wouldn't be, it'd be unfair in our
We just
position
want
to
to
do that.
understand for future what is being protected.
Sure.
Is it the overlay
Sure.
itself, or the people outside the overlay?
Yeah.
So am I able to appeal based on that? That there may be something
I mean,
different?
if I were you, I'd get them to upgrade that road and then things could be a lot different.
But that's outside the
I know,
overlay
I know,
district, so
I
it
know.
shouldn't have any bearing on our
But it has
decision,
to,
right?
it has to do with people going in and out. There was a lot of discussion about that part of it. At least that seemed to be one of the
Another
major
question
things.
is, what is the area? Because this is only a mile away from where this is happening, you know, so we're saying Devil's Fork is a commercial area. We're just outside that, you know what I mean? So how far is this area that we're concerned with?
You mean the overlay? How?
Well, no,
It's all the way
you were
around the
saying
lake,
that
right?
Devil's Fork is considered a commercial area even though it's in the overlay district.
I don't know. I'm not, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not familiar with that.
Thank you very much.
But I'm sorry I'm not answering your questions, and I wish I could, but I don't know that I have an answer for you.
Yeah.
per se.
We're not looking for an answer, just asking for consistency
Yeah.
in the rationale.
Yeah.
How we're
I
protecting
mean, I think you
both
guys have a
rationales,
beautiful place. I
one
love
side or
it.
the
I
other.
love the location there, and I'm hoping that you're able to move a couple benches and not have to cut the
We
trees
are,
down.
but now all the neighbors that complain are gonna feel like we were denied by the county and we're being sneaky and doing it anyway, which, you know, and that's, and I guess my problem is that, you know, I had a couple of people here to speak in behalf of me, it wasn't really clear that they would be allowed to, you know, we asked for the opposition, but we never asked for supporting companies. So there were two other people here who were gonna speak.
Although we did let some other people speak that weren't on the list, so.
Right.
Yeah. Because I think we gave everybody an ample opportunity to speak.
Well, and then the intent of the district, is that published?
The what?
Intent of the Lake Overlay
You
District?
need to call
Is it published?
the highway
Yes.
department
Yeah,
and
it's
tell
in our
them we want a
code.
traffic circle.
Our ordinance.
What is
Tell them we desperately need a
What's a
traffic
chapter?
circle
What is the intent?
at
Of the
park.
overlay is to protect what goes on within a certain number of feet of the
I
lake.
love
There's a
them.
lake overlay on.
If you've
on-
ever been to
on the-
Pinehurst,
each
North
one of the
Carolina,
different
you
lakes.
can't go 100 feet without getting on one.
Well, has their overlay, the Corps of Engineers has an overlay around Harts. Nothing can happen in the overlay around Harts.
Jim, I don't know if it's.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, I have been begging,
Well, they were.
I have been begging for one down here on 183. Get rid of that traffic light. Just put me in a traffic circle.
Two cases differently.
183
Pointing
and,
out that
College
residential, where you were talking about.
I'm okay.
Somebody was outside of the lake overlay having an impact on the lake overlay.
No, it's just,
He was asking for some clarification as to why that all worked out. I told him that I was. As far as it was like. You can't have that discussion.
It was not in the residential area.
that made a huge difference. And that's why I asked the question I did. I wanted, you know, I wanted them to say they were not in a residential neighborhood.
I know all about it.
No existing or expired covenants and restrictions.
They were using their driveways.
Yeah, so there to me, or in my logic, light of difference, they're not difference. That was the only.
To treat them all individually, you can't.
I just wanted some consistency.
I mean, location, I get it. If they move it, like you said, if they move it up their house.
We are.
We got two more and I have a feeling.
Well, I thought we did a good job. I think we had discussion, everybody got their say.
That their cars are parked far enough away that they.
Oh, come on now, raise a ruckus.
They don't have access back to the.
We'll get to it. Hey, we'll get to it. Listen,
And, you know,
this guy here.
I feel like that.
I mean, y'all good at it. I'm not assuming why they got y'all separated now.
That's right, oh, that's right, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like Yosemite, they don't realize like across the street.
We had a lot of discussion.
There's a red light.
I get it. I get it.
And I,
Well, I tried to.
Don't like what we did, I'm sure they didn't.
Allow you to have fun and have campfires and clean up after yourself.
And the time and everything is, 'cause it's a long way up, but all this.
I don't think they should have.
Well, we'll be out here till what, 9:30 tonight? Two more. Oh, the one is, hi.
Is it too late for me to add my name to K-Wade's? Since we own the property next door
I mean,
where they're parking?
sure, to show that you actually, you're talking about, oh, to here.
Yeah, this one.
Okay. Well, all right, you know.
I'll be quick.
When you're ready.
You want me to pound the gavel? Did I scare you?
all very much.
I like to be able to see that.
Now,
Glad I didn't see that Georgia far earlier.
within 10 years, we'll have a high rise out there.
I think we're wearing down the group, it's getting a little smaller. Okay, I guess we're called the meeting back to order again. And I think we're on to the next special request, right?
Yes.
Figure out where it is. Okay.
It's, the K-Wade
Right.
special exception.
Right.
C 0000004.
That one.
That's the one.
Okay, item 7. K. Wade is requesting a special exception approval as outlined in Chapter 38-7.2 and Chapter 38-11.1 of the Oconee County zoning ordinance to provide temporary parking on the subject property on Jocassee Lake Road to support a shuttle service for Jocassee Lake Tour guests.
Is this one all in the overlay? Is
So-
this one in there, all in the overlay?
Yes, sir.
And if we could have staff's opinion and introduction to this special request.
Mr. Chairman, we don't actually give opinions. But we'll.
Your thoughts?
Again, this is a special exception request, same structure, same situation in terms of the overlay. This request is to continue to allow a parking area to be used. It's immediately adjacent to the parcel, the property where the firewood is located, and it's being used as a shuttle parking for Devil's Fork. It's actually for specific tour service to be able to shuttle folks into the park, since, again, serving as kind of overflow parking area. We judged that to be a non-residential use, of course, and so that's why we're here again with that request. So it's very similar in terms of the issues at hand. If you have any other specific questions for us, we'd be glad to oblige, but I won't waste your time with any more specifics. You've already kind of got the sense of the area, I think.
I have a question for you. It wasn't clear to me the ownership of the said property and the ownership of the Lake Kiwi Tours. It seems like they were two different parties.
I think they can address that when the applicants
Okay.
speak to you about the arrangement that's been made there. We're only looking at it in terms of what's the land use going on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now I guess we're ready for the applicant, and let me make sure I know who the applicants are. So Kay, you're an applicant, and what's the, Butch Wade, are you for or against? You're for? Because she's sitting right next to you, I think so, right? Okay. And then Bruce May? I'm the owner of the property. Okay, you're for. And Sherry Cobb?
Yes.
Are you speaking in for?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no opposition then in the room, okay? All right, so Kay, do you want to start it off?
If I may, gentlemen, these are support letters that I think are in your file, but I think some things didn't get delivered to you. So there are 3 of the many support letters we have that we bring particular attention to this evening. From the park manager and from the head of Oconee
Thank
County
you.
Tourism.
All right, this one, I hate this guy's, he's late.
And also from a business owner like Joe Cassie.
Only he came back from the bathroom.
Okay. So my name is Kay Wade, and I am a co-owner of Joe Cassie Lake Tours. Thank you guys for your patience in listening to all this tonight. Thank you, Bruce, first of all. Bruce May is the property owner who has allowed us to use this property for the past several months, and we do appreciate it very much. And I'm sorry, Bruce, that we drug you into this. So we do understand about the lake overlay. We also understand about the benefit of this area, which is it is directly adjacent to the park property. So if people were to step 10 feet more, they would be in the park. There is a lot of congestion in the park, as you guys are well aware, and it is a problem. So a little bit about us. We run a lake tour business, and we do so with the very smallest environmental footprint that we can possibly get away with. We bring people out not just for recreation on the lake. It is a beautiful place. There's a lot of people that come to Oconee County now just to see the lake. There are people who come just to do our lake tours. And so in 2017, we had over 5,000 people that we took out, showed the lake, and every tour that we do has got an educational component behind it. So we're not just saying this is a beautiful place. We're saying, why is this a beautiful place? Why is it important to this area? Why is it important to this part of the world? And we talk about, y'all should come see us. We talk about birds and butterflies and trees and flowers and waterfalls, of course, and a lot of things in addition to the lake. But we have a lot of people now who want to come and see what we have to offer. So one of the things, that I want to emphasize is that by taking a group of people, it makes it affordable for people to come out to the lake. Every time we go out there, we're picking up trash off the lake, so we're doing everything that we can to be good neighbors and to help this place. But what we have found is that people who come into the park are often fighting to get a parking place at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so last year this became a problem. There ended up being people that we parked at our home, which has no parking whatsoever. So that was not an option. We looked around for another option, and then we approached Bruce and Philip Maloney, who owned this land, and we said, hey, would you mind if 2 days a week, Saturday and Sunday only, we park only our guests in this field, put them into our vehicles, drive them several hundred yards around into the park, through the fee booth, and then let them out to take a lake tour, and then pick them up at the end and drive them back. This eliminates people from walking on the road back and forth where you've got boats and trailers. It eliminates senior citizens from having to park in the day use area and then walk across an area which is called the Dike at Devil's Fork State Park. Some of them walk across the dike, some of them walk in the road. So we wanted to eliminate that. We don't think it's safe. We have families with young children. But in particular, we have a lot of elderly people. And without this service, they are less capable and less likely to come out and see the beauty that we have to offer. So, are we having fun yet? Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the reasons that we gave you the packet that we did with the emails is, for one thing, Ken Sloan has written in favor of us. Ken is head of the Mountain Lakes Visitors Bureau, and he has written a little bit about the positive economic impact that we have by bringing people into this area. They stay at the local bed and breakfast, they stay in the local motels, they eat in the local restaurants, and they bring a good amount of money into the area. In addition to that, the state park itself is able, because of our parking lot, and Kevin Evans has also written an email on our behalf. He is the manager of Devil's Fork State Park. By using what we're doing on the weekends, we free up all of the parking places for people to be able to come into the park and enjoy their facilities. So it doubles the money that the park is getting. We're paying to bring people through the fee booth, and they're also collecting money that are going by the fee station to park in the park. So I consider this a huge benefit for our state park system, not just Devil's Fork, but also all the people that get to go by the store and buy things that are paying the extra money to go in through the fee booth. So we figure that since this year, since we've been using, okay, yes, sir, I respect that.
Well, did you have a last thought you want? I didn't mean to totally disrupt, but I wanted to do it at the same time.
Between this past weekend and the first weekend that we used this, which was the Memorial Day weekend, there has been an additional $4,000 brought into the state park system because of people coming through the fee booth. And that is based on what we consider the averages of the ages of the people who are paying, not all of whom are paying the full price. So we kind of split it as to how many do we think are seniors, how many do we think are children under 16, and how many are paying that full price. And we did that and averaged it out. And we figure about $4,000 extra to the park.
Thank you, thank you.
Any questions now or no?
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Not a question. I had a couple questions for you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
So just to clarify, Saturday and Sunday use only, and what are the times?
Absolutely. We take down the cable that blocks off access to the area at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then when our last tour is finished for the day at 5:30, we put it back up.
Okay, and the access is the drive before the last exception hearing we saw, right? It's
The drive right directly after,
well, I guess
as you're
depending on which
approaching
way
the
you
park.
come. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Yes.
Can I clarify one thing? You said weekends, so no holiday traffic then?
Has a holiday fallen? I think that,
We stipulate weekends only, is that going to restrict you, or do you want to include holidays?
I think I would like to include holidays.
It's kind of what I'm
Yes.
getting at as well, so thank you.
Yes. Thank you, yes. So we sent pictures, I know you got multiple pictures of this, but what we did was try to show you what it looks like when it's full of cars, because we do want to be fair, and let you know what it looks like when we do have cars parked. We have people, 3 staff members on site of the parking area the whole time that people are coming and going. 2 are running a shuttle, the other is just making sure that everybody is parked neatly and in order. Very minimal impact. The rest of the week, the grass recovers. We have watched closely for any signs of damage to the area from cars coming and going, and by Monday, you can't even tell cars were there.
Thank you. Thank you. Butch? Did you want to speak? Yes?
Yes, sir. Just a minute of your time. My name is Brooks Wade. I'm Kay's husband and co-owner of Joe Cassidy Lake Tours. And just a couple of things that she didn't quite get to that I'd like to mention. Dollars and cents wise, with regard to the benefit our business is to Devil's Fork State Park, we estimate we brought in nearly $20,000 of $3 to $5 fees to enter the park through the extra customers that we bring to the lake that would not have access to Lake Jocassee without the service that we provide, because they are from out of town, because they perhaps don't own a boat, because they don't want to pay $300 or $400 to rent a boat, and because they want to learn more about Lake Jocassee and the Jocassee Gorges than they can do on their own, because they don't live here. They have not studied the remarkable ecosystem that is the Jocassee Gorges. So the service that we provide is financially extremely beneficial to the park, and I think useful at many levels to the upstate population, and beyond that, thanks to National Geographic declaring the Jocassee Gorges as one of the 50 last great places on Earth. Our international tourism has expanded since 2013 when that edition, 2012 actually, when that edition came out. With regard to the property itself, first of all, we are not charged a dime, thanks to the generosity of the two property owners, and we do not charge a dime. So there's no transaction financially that goes on with our guests whatsoever. We don't pay for the property, we don't charge for the use, and we don't charge for the service of taking them in and out of the park. It is a service to the people we serve. One of the hardships in the 6 months, there's a 6 months period where the park does not allow parking for people who do not have a boat trailer, not towing in a boat at the areas adjacent to the park. That's why we have to do what we do, because there is no parking for these people. It closes out, as some of you know, or most of you know, at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday and Sunday mornings in the busy season. So one of the services that is most important in us originating this whole plan is that our demographic is 3 months of those 6 months, in the non-summer months, it is distinctly senior citizens, 70% of our trade. And their options are, if they can get a parking place at the day use area, the only place they're allowed to park inside the park, their walk is 15 to 20 minutes from that area across the dam and over to where the boats launch and operate from. By the service that we provide and take them through the pay booth where they pay their money to the park, and we release them at the bathroom facilities by the office, they have a 5-minute walk to the park, to the boat itself. So it serves the function of caring for the demographic of people that we have. And in the summer months, there's simply no place to park at all after 10 o'clock. So we would not be able to function as a business in the absence of the access to this property. We are not a light footprint business on that property. We are a no footprint business on it, except for Saturdays and Sundays and holidays, which are the days that we are most restricted. You won't even know we're there. The two signs that we use are there so the customers don't drive past us and go into the park. So we catch their eye. They are signs stuck in the dirt. They can be put in the back of the car and taken home at any time. We are a no footprint business at that time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Very good points. Thank you. Okay, so Bruce May.
Hi, my name is Bruce May. I'm the owner of the property along with Philip Maloney. I'm looking at the clock. It's 8:20, and when I was first asked about this, I think the meeting took 2 minutes. They told me, I knew what the nature of their business was. They told me about the stress on parking, and I think the meeting lasts 2 minutes long. It's not a commercial venture. We allowed them to use the property at no charge. They do not charge for parking. I do want to outline what I think is a fairly significant benefit besides the income to the state. A few weeks ago, or perhaps a month ago, there were some folks from California, and they asked me, they said they were looking, they had been traveling 27,000 miles across America. They live in California. One set of kids goes to school up in Oregon, the other in Wyoming. And they were looking at Lake Travis and Lake Kiwi as a place to reside, Oconee County and Lake Travis. And the owner, or now the owner, he lives up in the cliffs of Kiwi Falls North. He simply asked me a question. He goes, give me one more reason to buy here instead of Lake Travis. Because they had worked, he had worked and had been stationed somewhere, I guess in Austin. And he asked me, he said, give me one reason to move to Oconee County. And I said, go on Jocassee Lake tours and go to Lake Jocassee. And they have purchased at the cliffs of Kiwi Falls North, which ironically is at the very north end of the lake. But the financial impact, I think, that Jocassee has beyond just tourism. In other words, people come here, they fall in love, and they move here. And I think that's an understated benefit of what Brooks and Kay do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Sherry?
I just wanted to say that we own the property next door on the opposite side. So there's our property, Bruce's property, and then the park. When this venture came to play or came to fruition, Brooks and Kay and Bruce met with us as property owners, wanted to know our feelings about it. If we had any kind of, right from the get-go, all of them said, if you have any opposition at all, we won't do it. okay? And we had no problems. We've seen no problems. That their staff maintains that parking lot very well when they're there during the day. It kind of works like clockwork. And my husband are there. We're at our pool, you know, on the weekends. We see what happens. We see the people coming and going, and the people drive in. The guys pick them up. You know, I guess they register when they drive in. The guys pick them up and shuttle them over to the park. I've seen people with canes get out of the car. I've seen wheelchairs get out of the car. And I just want to say, as a property owner next door, we've had no problem with it at all, with the parking there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, did I miss anybody? Anybody else have anything to say on this particular special exception request? Okay. So, I guess we're now, do you have anything more to say?
I don't believe so. I will interject, just so I don't forget about it. Adam reminded me. Instead of having the board orders ready for you tonight to sign, we'll prepare those for tomorrow, and I'll contact you about coming by to sign them for us if you can.
Okay.
When we're finished. So just a housekeeping matter.
Sure, okay. All right, so, so again, we have a format of, do we do all four at once, or are we doing one at a time? Does anybody want to make a motion to?
I
one
feel
of
like this is a no-brainer. We ought to do them all at one time.
I second that motion. All in favor of doing them all at once, raise your right hand. Anybody against? Left hand? Okay, motion carried, so we'll do them all at once. So I'll do a lot of reading. So I'll be looking for a motion in the affirmative to the fact that special exception for where am I missing? Okay, the Jocassee Lake Road, the Jocassee Lake Road,
What was your question, Mr. Chairman?
okay, I got them all mixed up.
What
So,
were you-
we're dealing with a special exception request for this, it's been a long night. The special request and request for the lake overlay, parking area that we're dealing with here. And we want to state that in the affirmative that it is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the spirit, purposes, and the intent and general requirements of this chapter, to include the definition and intent of the district in which the special exception is requested. And it is in the very best interests of the county, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare. And it is suitable for the property in question and designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be in harmony with and appropriate in appearance to the existing and intended character of the general vicinity. And it is suitable in terms of effect on the highway traffic, parking, safety, with adequate access arrangements to protect streets from undue congestion and hazards. So may I get a request, or get a motion to the affirmative of all the above?
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, you might want to also mention, do you want to, whether or not you want to include any conditions or stipulations
okay,
on
gotcha.
the
I was going to make a motion, Mr. Chair,
Okay,
to approve the exception, with the exception of continuing the business Saturday, Sunday, and holiday only, and no expansion of beyond that, and limited to parking only, and the hours listed now that you gave us. I think it was 9 to 5, right?
Do I have a second to the amended motion?
Second.
You want just Saturday and Sunday only, right?
I mentioned Saturday, Sunday, and holidays.
Is that what you're saying?
Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, yes, sir.
And okay,
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I'll
Okay,
second that.
we have an amended motion that has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the amended motion? Okay, all in favor of the amended motion, the amendment to the motion, raise your right hand. Okay, it's carried. So now we have the amended motion on the table. Any discussion on the amended motion?
Mr. Chairman, just to state for the record, in general, I really want to prevent commercial activities or non-residential activities in the lake overlay. But in this particular case, that section of road right next to the park, I think this is a very logical extension of the park and serves the public good. And for that reason, I would recommend, I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, ready for a vote? All in favor of the amended motion, raise your right hand. Okay. Any opposition? Left hand? Okay, motion carried. So now, based on the evidence presented to the board, do I hear a motion that the proposed special exception be approved?
So moved.
Second? What, yours is a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your left hand. Okay. Motion approved.
I'm sorry, was that, was?
It's unanimous,
Was
right?
that unanimous? Okay.
Because you're used to raising your
Oh,
left
it's not
hand. no?
unanimous.
Still here with my right hand or my left hand, whichever one you want.
Okay. Okay, so that,
All those against?
pardon me?
You asked for all those in favor, you asked for all those against, sir?
Oh, didn't I do that? Okay. Anybody in opposition to the
Right hand or left hand?
middle?
Let's get
Okay.
this
Okay, let me be sure I'm clear on this, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Fowler voted in the affirmative on the amended motion, but voted against
Correct.
the,
Correct.
Want to restrict
the
it,
action,
Right.
final version. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask, if I go back to that, I don't remember on the last one, not this one, but the previous one, I don't remember taking a vote on the final special exception. Did we voted all four, had a lot of discussion
Yeah,
about
we
that?
did.
Did we
I made
really
the
do
mo-
that?
Yeah.
As long as you're comfortable with your records, that we did that on all
I-
ones so far.
That
fine.
was when you dozed off.
I think we're okay.
Okay, so I think we're finished with that special exception, right?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. You guys done a super job with that, and I look forward to the next time going out there and riding the pontoon boat again. And for senior citizens like me that can't walk anymore, I appreciate it too. Okay. All right, what are we looking at?
Sugar Lake.
Yeah,
We were looking at the next one.
Okay. The next special exception, and then the last one on the docket for tonight, is item 8. David and Catherine, is it Mace? Mace? Are requesting a 20-foot setback variance for an accessory building from the 25-foot setback requirement provided for under Article 10, Section 38-10.2 of the zoning ordinance on property along Chattooga Lake Road, Mountain Rest, South Carolina. And would staff like to make some introduction for us on this case?
Mr. Chairman, this request is for setback variance. I think we have the visuals on the maps, and you have most of this material, I think, in your original packet, and I'm talking about the visuals. The request is to allow a 20-foot setback variance from the 25-foot requirement for a control-free district for this property in Chattooga, Chattooga Lake development. This is 25 feet from the edge of the right-of-way, and it says, again, as everything tonight, a private road, fairly narrow. You may have noticed, and you'll see it on the screen now, that there's a significant grade there, but then that's the case with a lot of the properties along the lake there, that it slopes down rather abruptly. The applicant's intent is to build a house, but also, in this case, this would be a a separate structure, not the house itself, that would be a sort of garage workshop area. To our knowledge, and in talking with the folks who were involved with the HOA and looking at the documents, there's no private covenant or restriction on that front setback that's different from the county's. In other words, the county requirement applies. They do have restrictions pertaining to the lakefront, but that's not really an issue here. So this is a variance request, and as you know, that means you only have to do one vote. The request could be approved as is. You could approve it somewhat less than the request he's asked for, or simply denied on the basis of the criteria that are applied to determine whether or not a variance is appropriate. And that's also in your packet within the staff report that lists the criteria that are used to determine whether or not a variance is in keeping with the intent of the code. So if you have any questions about that in particular, I'd be glad to answer them.
At one point in the material, it looked like they were looking for adding a garage, but it also says a separate building.
That is the separate building.
Okay,
Yes.
so it is a garage.
He will be, the applicant will be able to explain the specific use more detail to you. For our purposes, the request has to do with the location of the use itself.
So I have two people signed up to speak. David Mays, and I suppose you're speaking in favor? Yes. And Felix, you're speaking in favor? Yes. Okay. Anybody speaking in opposition tonight? Okay. Right between you? That's an interesting position. Okay. All right. So Dave, you want to start?
Hi, I'm Dave Mace. I think it's been presented pretty much like we presented it to the guys in the zoning department, so that I don't have a lot to add to it. Like you said, it's a private road, and the gravel road part of it is very narrow. It's only about 12 feet wide in front of our house, and the actual road right-of-way is 50 feet. So there's a lot of unused road on both sides of the actual driving part of the road. So when you look at where we'd like to put that garage, it's still close to 30 feet from the edge of the driving road to where I would like to put my garage. It's still back a long way from where the road itself is. And that's consistent with much of the property on the lake. If you drive around Lake Chechugah, it's a very narrow road all the way around the lake. Most of the lots are fairly narrow between the lake and the road. And so most people who have built have had to do funny things to get their houses and their property on the spaces. And we find ourselves in the same position of asking for a variance on the front side in order to fit. Let's see. I think the topography, like Bill said, is probably our biggest enemy, and that the further we go down the hill, the steeper it gets. The further we get away from the road, the faster the hill falls away. So that in the process of building that garage, if I build it closer to the road, the actual forms that go into the poured walls will be much lower. I'll be in the 2 to 3 foot range of exposed wall, and that if I can build it closer to the road. If I get pushed back further toward the lake, I'll be in the 6 foot range of exposed wall, which nobody wants to look at an exposed concrete wall. And so, and because it's a pretty community, it's a beautiful lake, I'd like to try to keep that to a minimum. And so the closer I am to the road, the less exposed concrete is out there to see. And so that, like I said, that's a big part of it. The topography is a big part of it. And the second part of that is the further it goes down the hill, the more rain I have to try to defer off from my driveway. So it becomes an erosion issue. I have less driveway if I'm closer to the road, which collects less water, which I have less to divert away from eroding into the lake. And we've tried to be very careful with that in the process of our building to this point, with fences and planting grass where we disturb the soil. And we're very concerned that the property looks nice when it's finished, that it's appealing to our neighbors, and that it's minimum impact on the lake. So that's another thing. Let's see. I guess that pretty much explains what I want to say.
All right, thank you. Does any member of the board want to address?
I have a question for you.
Dave?
I actually went out there this afternoon. The pins you have dropped, I assume the ones closest to the road, that's as close as you're probably getting.
I actually asked.
I didn't walk it off or pull a tape, but I assume that that's what
Right.
you're asking for is how it's pinned right now?
There's two sets of pins on the garage. One
Right.
set, there's a set on the front side that's the closest ones. That's the one I'd like. And then the second set is at 25 feet. And that's where it would be. So you can see, there's even elevations on there. I asked the surveyor to put elevations on there so you can see how much difference the drop is.
Yeah, I took a photo of it. I definitely can tell.
So we're really requesting the front set of pins.
Okay.
There's 8 pins there, and I would like the 4 pins that are closer to the road. I think they're pink.
Just 1 second. Chair, we might need to, you good? Okay. We're good, sorry.
He color coded those. He color coded those 8 pegs that are by the garage.
Right.
The 4 that are the same color, the closest to the road, and then there's 4 that are the same color that are at 25 feet
Okay.
setback.
I assumed that you were set them both, what you were asking for and
Yeah.
what it was. Okay,
Right.
makes sense. Thank you.
One of the people that have written in an opposition to this said that because of the curve and the fact the garage is going to be so close to the road that it's going to block their vision. Can you just talk about that?
I doubt that, that's true. First of all, we don't drive fast on the road. I mean, we drive like 10 or 15 miles per hour on the road. And it's a slow curve. You can see this is the curve. And it's not like a corner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't mean to answer for you, but am I not right by saying there's a tree that's closer to the road
There
than
is,
the
and I
actual?
think I might have to
That
take
would
that
be more of
tree.
an issue than.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a tree that would,
Yeah.
if you're looking at like a, sorry, I'm not trying to take your time, but
No,
I think I'm
but-
probably helping you. There's a tree would be closer to the road than, I guess, the corner of his garage would be,
feet.
so.
Yeah.
That's one
There are
one
multiple
point I
trees.
noticed when I drove through. If there's a blind spot issue, then the tree would be more of a problem than the garage, so.
Okay, any other questions of him? Dave? Okay. Who would like to speak next? This can be interesting.
My name is Chip Westcott, and I live 2 houses down from the Mazes where they're planning to build. I know in your packet you received copies of a petition that was signed by a number of residents. I don't frankly know how many because I wasn't the one that organized it. I just happened to be the one that's able to come to the meeting. So I'll just make a few points that they signed in the petition. It was number 1, there are no hardships such as large boulders on the property that prevent structures from being built within the county and Chautauqua Lake Club regulations. Number 2, there's no existing structures that would require deviations for new construction. Number 3, depending upon where vehicle entry of the garage is planned, placement of a garage so close to Chautauqua Lake Road would create driving safety concern. Other vehicles driving around the curve may not easily see those exiting from the garage. Number 4, contour of the property was obvious and visible prior to purchase. And number 5, approval of variance would create a precedent for the applicant and other residents of Chautauqua Lake Club that would not be in our best interest. But I'll just make one point. separate from this, because this is the petition that a number of people signed. And that is that in this area of the lake, and it's really, most of the people that are on lake property, you're dealing with a fairly significant slope that goes down to the lake. And what most of us have done is we have contoured our property so that you have a driveway that enters in at some sort of an angle and then makes a turn so that the garage that you have or the parking space is parallel to the road. And when you do that, that allows you to actually place the structure itself a little bit lower so you don't have this wall that's created. And if I could show you our property, we're 2 houses down. Granted, ours isn't quite as dramatically sloped as theirs. You can see this is the width of Chattooga Lake Road. This is our garage, and this is the little driveway we built down here. And so our garage is actually pretty close to ground level the way it was built. It doesn't have to be way up because we're not driving straight in from the road. And so that's the way that most of our residents have dealt with that. So when you drive around the lake, you will see that most of the residents have designed their parking so that it's parallel to the road. His next door neighbor, which is the Johnsons, it used to be the Clarks. I've got a picture of the way theirs is situated. You'll be able to see here, again, this is Chattooga Lake Road right here. His property is actually back on that side. They have taken a driveway around here and then driven into a flat area, and you can see that's why that house is down low, because they've accommodated that the way they've designed their driveway. So what a number of the residents are basically saying is that the contour of the land was known, and they recommend that the driveway be built similar to the way the other residents have done that in the neighborhood. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, before you go further, just as a reminder, in case you didn't see that, the petition he's referring to in your original packet, I think we put it in the addendum packet that was on you, in front of you this evening, and I believe there are 10 names on it.
Okay. Next? So you're Felix?
Yes.
You're speaking for or against?
Well, I'm,
Neither.
really neither. I'm the president of our HOA, Felix Gravino, and Chip actually offered a solution, even though he's against. So his solution is to do just what he said, was to kind of go in a slant, and I think that's the solution to the problem. And to Dave's garage, and he won't have to do such a hard grade if he can't get the variance. That might be the solution. So I'm just being the president. I was the fence mender here. I just didn't want anybody to kill each other, you know. And I just showed up to see, hoping that all would be well. And it's kind of a, well, I didn't want to go on and on like Tennyson's poem, but it's really nutty. Our lake is really weird. One half has different variances. It's kind of weird in the history, or covenants. Yeah, the one side that Dave is on, when Dave started to build, it was a little bit partly my fault, as I gave him all the bylaws, and I think I was late in getting him the variances, or excuse me, the covenants for his side, but he got kind of caught between the middle of some things, and he got a little overzealous, and he chewed up and took up all the vegetation, and I think I have to take some of the blame of that, and but anyway, that's another story. But I feel a little responsible for that, but and I think Dave caught a little bit of grief from that from some of the members, because they said, "Where's all the vegetation?" You know, 'cause he clear cut. But trees are a renewable resource and things will grow back, so that's the way I kind of took it, but, anyway.
While
enough-
you're up, let's have you speak to the size of his lot versus the size of lots on the other side of the lake.
The size,
His lot is considerably larger,
yeah, he's got a pretty good sized lot.
1 acre.
Yeah.
and typical lots on the other side of the lake.
Yeah, go ahead.
The annex,
If you could come up to the podium, please.
Yeah.
Dave and I live in the annex. We've got 18 lots that have a minimum lot size requirement of 1 acre. The other portion of the lake, which represents about 75% of the lake, has basically no restriction, and those lots vary anywhere from a few hundred square feet up to, some are over 100 acres. So it's just this, great big forest area that they built a lake, and over the years, they started developing the lots around it. And this particular annex has got a series of covenants associated with it that have restricted use. Did that answer your question?
It's like two different countries almost.
So if I understand where this sits, there's a recommendation that you could do something differently that would appease your neighbors. Is that something that you're willing to do?
Not with what we have drawn.
Let's just all stay up there together. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking with you.
I have a 3-car garage that the doors all face the road. And so if I turn that 3-car garage 90 degrees so that I can drive in from the side, now I have, instead of being 24 feet deep, I'm 32 feet deep. So the amount of concrete that's going to show out is significantly more because I'm turning the garage 90 degrees. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, no, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
That just wouldn't be something I would do. It's interesting, Chip. I came over and I measured the distance from the center of the road to the back corner of your garage. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I know exactly what it is.
What is that?
It's 41 feet, and we got a permit to build the garage in 2011.
So I'm just saying that it's an interesting community in that the variances that we have, like for instance, Chip's garage is built in the right of way.
No.
But it is, the road right of way.
Well, do we, excuse me. I think we probably get the idea of what, so what you're saying is that there are some alternatives. You're saying they're not very economical for what you want to do.
Not economical.
So
it's
you're holding your request for the variance request still?
Yes,
Okay.
I will.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to move it back a little bit if that will help solve for Chip. To go 10 feet back, so it would be a 15-foot variance. It's still going to be a lot of concrete, but I would very much like it to be where it is. And actually, where they pegged it today, Mr. Lusk is at 7 feet. It's not at 5 feet. So it's actually further back than my request was. And that's at the closest corner. The other corner,
Right.
it's set on an angle.
Right.
It's actually much further than that to the road.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
as you know, we do not make recommendations, but let me make a few comments to kind of clarify what the standard is for a variance. The standard, and this is all case law, will pretty much this holds up, that economic or monetary rationale or reason is not grounds for a variance. It's based on the character of the property, the hardships that run with the land. If an individual creates their own hardships or their own actions, that's not grounds for a variance. And again, I would just remind you to review what the criteria are for variance approval, because that's pretty clear cut.
We haven't moved on yet, right? I don't want to have an open conversation, but whoever you represent the board, is that correct?
I'm the president of the HOA, yeah, so I'm the board, head of the board.
Is there an acceptable, meet us halfway setback that keeps the intent of his design, I guess, from the front end drive, or is it just hard line is what it is? I didn't know if there'd been that kind of discussion of, I think we, as a community, would be okay with, giving you a little bit of this back, given the slope of the lot, or,
I think there would be some kind of, I believe there should be some kind of, be halfway kind of thing in my.
okay, I didn't know if there'd been any group discussion, or if, I guess your personal opinion is that you would be okay with that? When are you looking to build?
Concrete guy wants to start the end of the month of August.
It looked like you were close. Okay, thank you.
So were you?
I know none of that was on the record, but,
Were you thinking of that they could collaborate together and maybe come
I
up
just
with a
didn't know if they'd had
solution that isn't on the table right here?
I just didn't know if they had any discussion about it. But
I trust the board trying to, when we knew this was happening, we didn't know at first, when we saw the sign, figured, well, our view was, well, I guess it's between the county and him.
I have one more thing to add. I spoke personally with Johnson.
Wow.
If the three of you just want to stand up, you're behind the podium, right?
I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I spoke personally with the person who lives across the street, with the person who lives next door, my right neighbor, and the person on my left, and said, this is what I'm planning to do weeks ago, and none of them had a problem with it. I suggested that they write to you, and I don't know if they wrote or not, but my direct neighbors, my next door neighbor on my right, my next door neighbor on the left, on my side of the street, and the person who lives across the street in a house, and the person who owns a lot across the street, I've spoken to all of those people, and none of those people have a problem with me putting the garage.
They all signed the petition.
I can tell you if they signed the petition.
John
Workman's?
John Workman, I believe, signed the petition, it was right next door to him.
Yeah.
I talked to John, he didn't seem to have a problem, so there must
And
be some
then
miscommunication.
The Johnsons?
The Johnsons sent
also
a
rescinded
note, an email, a later email saying they'd like to be removed from
Okay.
the petition.
And then
So it's actually 8 people, so.
Gwen Thompson is across the
Thompson?
street, yes.
Yeah,
She signed the petition.
okay, I'm sorry, I spoke with them and they said they didn't have a problem with it, so I don't know what to say.
Often in these situations, it seems, and I'm just going to throw out a crazy idea, it seems to be that a collaboration of the affected parties outside of this meeting can accomplish more than what we can inside this meeting. I almost have this feeling like you guys go back and talk and can probably work out a solution that makes everybody happy, and we don't have to be ruling on how you deal with your land. Why wouldn't that be an acceptable solution? Why not?
It is. I mean, your next meeting is the 30 days, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What you're suggesting is a table?
Or can
Table with the directive that gives them some time to talk amongst themselves and work out a solution that may be different than what we have in front of us right now. There may be a better one because there's more parties involved and they work together. What a novel idea, right?
If they'll work together.
do we have to wait the full 30 days?
I would,
We do have a membership meeting coming up very soon. And that's, we also have a board meeting coming up very soon. We have a board meeting come up in August, but that's not in time with this zoning reports. But we could have an emergency meeting with the board.
we'd
I have a
have
question.
to, we'd have to wait a month, we'd have to wait till the following month.
I have a question to you, Bill. Can we vote with an exception of, could we vote for approval with an accepted agreement of their governing of their HOA agreement.
So what you're saying is you would be voting blind as to what the final
Yeah,
determination
I think that's a
is.
problem. That's a problem.
I'm just trying to get
That's
avoid
probably,
voting
that sounds
again
problematic
for
if
it
I had to
and
guess.
hearing everything twice. So
I think you would need to know what the final determination is.
And for
And
me.
make your,
Well,
and make your decision based on that number. In other words, how many feet? You know, if he's getting 10 feet, 5 feet, what it is, you're gonna have to make that final determination.
And for me, if they change, if someone, instead of wanting 20 feet, a number of members of the community say, okay, 10 feet, I think we'd have to take considerable weight, though, if there were still people who insisted on the full 25-foot setback, because that's the rule. And
You're really looking at the criteria as much as you are at what
Right.
is the response of the neighbors in the area.
And for me, I
Make
guess,
sure that you're clear on the.
for me, when I look at this lot, first of all, Mr. Mace bought the lot, I guess clear-headed, and it's a typical lake lot. There's lake lots, I mean, you look around Kiwi or Jocassee or these small lakes, it's a typical lake lot. And you've got to, when you buy a lake lot, you've got to figure out, is it going to meet the needs of your construction plans? If you're going to have a 3-car garage, where are you going to put it? And how are you going to site it? And if you want, a lot of people look at the steepness and they say, well, that doesn't accommodate the kind of house I want. I just want a single-story house, and it's really made for a, upper story and a walkout lower level kind of thing. And this is a very nice lot. It's a 1-acre lot. It's shaped like a bowl, so it's really a pretty lot. But I'm not sure there's any cause to approve any variance to the existing standards. They're there for protection of everybody in the neighborhood.
And they were there when he bought it.
We're there when he bought it, and it's not like the property is got a bunch of surprises on it. As someone said, it's been clear cut now. The pictures we have are all vegetated, but it's been clear cut now, and it's a bowl. It's a section of a bowl that opens out onto the water. So, well, it's been cleared. It's been basically cleared. Okay, it's not like the pictures. It's been cleared quite a bit. You can see the contours, and it's bowl shaped. So I would struggle with agreeing to any setback variation because of the fact that there's just the criteria. It doesn't match any of the criteria. The setbacks are there for a reason, and I don't see any reason to deviate from those.
So are we ready to vote so we can have a further discussion or final discussion, or is anybody on the board in favor of delaying it pending their discussion to try to work out something? And he can come back again if he still has a variance request, or he may resolve it with his community.
Well, based on what I see here, I don't think they're gonna come to a resolution. I think it's a waste of all of their time to continue to have a discussion that to me does not seem is gonna be fruitful. I just don't see how they're gonna come up with a resolution.
Because they're so different and they're.
I think just based on the 3 wonderful people we have here tonight, we've got differing opinions. We've got people telling him evidently based on the applicant's statement that there were people in favor of it, yet they signed a petition. So I just don't know how they're gonna be fruitful in their negotiations.
You know, if he was asking for a 5-foot setback, it'd be all right, something like that for me. But 5 foot from the road right away is too close to the right of way.
Again, I'd go back to the conditions we have to vote on. Extraordinary and exceptional conditions, particularly pertaining to this particular piece of property. Conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. I just don't know how we'd find that here, even with just a 5-foot difference. I couldn't honestly say that those apply.
So it sounds like we're ready for vote.
I move we deny the request.
Can you do that? Can you do that? Don't we have to vote on the conditions?
Sir, what conditions are we referring to? You mean the criteria?
Right. Don't we have to vote on the criteria? You can just, I didn't know we could just deny a request.
It's probably, you don't have to, there's no protocol that's required on it, but you could vote to deny it and perhaps add to that to explain your rationale behind the vote, the motion that you've made. In other words, based on such and such criteria, so that you've qualified your reasoning or rationale for
Okay.
for
All
the
right, so
decision.
there's
That would be addressing the criteria directly.
So there's a motion on the table to deny the request. Is there a second?
Me to expand
Okay.
the reasons in there? Or
Sure. Do you want to include that in your motion? Or do you want to?
Would that be appropriate?
Sure. I mean, if any one of the criteria is not met, it's a deny, you could deny it on that basis.
Okay. I move we deny the request because there are not any extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property, and these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. And I'll leave it at that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Anybody against it, against the motion? Nope.
This time.
Okay, so I hope you can work things out with the community. You got good folks to work with there, that's good.
Wow, okay. I saw your sign.
You come up with any old business,
That's my lot.
Okay.
And it don't need to change.
We're still going.
He's got one of the biggest lots on the lake.
you propose an adjournment?
Okay, is there any old business? Is there any new business?
There's something I want to bring up that needs to be brought up, I think. In the future, when we have cell phone or things that affect Sheriff's Department and communication, I would like to see a representative from the Sheriff's Department or from EMS or someone come and speak to the issue.
You're referring
Especially if
to-
it's an area that is a dead spot that they're having problems in.
Communication tower request is what you're talking about.
I'm thinking that that's something that needs to be addressed, not just from the communications tower people and the neighbors. I think that the county needs to have a rep there stating whether or not it is an asset and needs to be done.
You got pluses and minuses to cell towers.
Yes.
I own one.
You own one?
Lightning rod.
We can request that.
Thank you.
By
Can
the
you
way,
also
I
request my
just want
traffic
to
circle?
thank the board for your patience tonight. It's been a long evening. I think we had some good discussion. Maybe I let things drag out a little bit too long. I apologize if that happened, but it was good working with everybody tonight. So it's nice, you felt like our board was working tonight, you know?
We work tonight.
All right, Jim, what do you need?
I sent a message out, and I got in lots of trouble for sending a message out earlier, an email message. I'd like to implore everybody, when we have these requests to consider, everybody go visit this site. These particular tonight, I think, were essential.
Yeah.
Everyone had to go see
Right.
those. I'm not asking who did and who didn't. Just saying, if you didn't see them, you wouldn't appreciate what the situation was. And I think really I'll make an attempt to get to see if it's a cell tower, go see where they're gonna put the cell tower and see what the surroundings are, or whatever. I think that's vital for us.
Can we put that on your expense, going and looking at them?
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second.
So moved. Second.
So moved. Approved.
Wait a minute, I'm going to dissent on that one.
Hey.
Bill, do you need these sign-in sheets?
And also a copy of everything that you all received. Please don't take stuff on the